Decaf Deceit, A Brown's Ground Mystery, Book 6, written by Wendy Meadows. This is an unabridged audiobook.
"It's a minor surgery," they said. Monica mumbled with her mouth stuffed with cotton. She'd flopped into the passenger seat of her neighbor and best friend Carol Hamilton's car and was now sitting there with her jacket over her like a blanket, and somehow her shoes had come off. "It was just your wisdom teeth. You'll feel fine tomorrow," Carol said as she pulled her keys from her pocket. "Maybe we should stop at the store. I want a cheeseburger and some nail polish," Monica said with her right hand raised, index finger pointing straight up like she'd just had the best idea. "You can't eat that yet. You're going to have soup and tea and maybe Jell-O if you're good." "What? You're not the boss of me," Monica replied, then changed her mind. "You'd be a great boss." "I'm glad you think so, because I'm in charge until you're back to your old self. Now, let's get that seatbelt buckled and we'll be on our way," Carol chuckled as her friend babbled, the anesthetic slowly wearing off. It was a chore she tried to put off indefinitely. Why did she need to have her wisdom teeth removed? They'd been in her head for years and hadn't made a peep. Then suddenly, at a routine dentist appointment, she was told her x-rays indicated trouble. "I thought my teeth were done moving. I'm in my 30s, for heaven's sakes," she argued with the dentist. "Well, they're not moving. In fact, they've been in the same spot for several years, partially exposed, but not causing any problems. Until now. They've started to decay," he said as if he were telling her the lunch specials. "Ew, that can't be. I take good care of my teeth. Heck, you should know that," Monica replied, embarrassed and slightly grossed out. Wisdom teeth are stubborn little buggers. Since only a small portion of them is showing, they're darn near impossible to keep as healthy as our other teeth. Some stay as hard as diamonds and never cause a problem. Then there are those like yours. They need to come out to prevent any spread of decay. We can do it in a day. You'll be fine," the dentist said, flashing a perfectly white and even smile. Monica remembered getting to the oral surgeon's office. She remembered waiting, she remembered being in the waiting room, she remembered the weird smell that seemed to emit from all dentists' offices, a cross between toothpaste and crazy glue. She remembered taking a seat in the soft leather chair shaped like a crescent moon and hearing the buzz of the motor that reclined her backward. The nurse put an IV in her hand. She counted backwards, and everything else from there was a blank. The next thing she knew, she was being wheeled to Carol's car, and the sun was warm on her face. It was one of the best car rides she'd ever had in her life. There didn't seem to be a single bump or pothole the whole ride home. Once inside, Carol helped Monica into bed. "Are you leaving?" Monica asked as her friend pulled the covers up to her chin, like any good mother would. "No, I'll hang around for a little while. Dudley has the kids. It's nice and quiet here. Unless you want me to go." "No, don't go. I've got a lot to tell you." Monica's eyes became heavier and heavier, but she insisted on talking. Her words blended one into the other, and before long she was dozing off. When she finally woke up, the light from the sun was at the angle it usually hit in her room around 5 p.m. in the evening. Her mouth was sticky and thick until she remembered the wad of cotton that had been stuffed in it. Carefully, she pulled out the cotton that had been keeping her wounds from bleeding. They were gross. However, not so gross that Monica couldn't toss them on her nightstand to deal with later. There was a note from Carol letting her know there was broth on the stove, and the cleaning and eating guidelines from the doctor were on the fridge. Her prescription for hydrocodone had been filled at the drugstore next to the oral surgeon's office and was in her bathroom on the sink. Monica grimaced at the thought of taking pills. Not only did it trigger her gag reflex, but she'd already missed a whole day of work for this. Taking anything labeled with warnings not to drive or operate heavy machinery was out of the question. Without waiting another minute, she eased out of bed, shuffled to the bathroom, and looked in the mirror. Her jaws were slightly swollen. Her eyes were a little puffy. There was a trace of dried blood at the corners of her mouth. She picked up the vial of pills and looked at them before walking into the kitchen and dropping them in her purse. She doubted she'd use them, but if the pain became unbearable while she was at work, she'd leave the truck and call Carol to pick her up. There was no way she wasn't going to work tomorrow. Her bills weren't going to pay themselves. One day missed for wisdom teeth was one day too many. With the sun setting and the strange feeling that she'd been abducted by aliens, losing time along with her wisdom teeth, Monica sat in front of the television, sipping her broth and waiting for the inevitable pain to settle in as the anesthetic wore off. By 9 p.m., she was feeling pretty good and felt no need for anything stronger than a Tylenol. She went to bed with her schedule for the next day planned in her head. It included a stop at the gas station, at the bank, and at the florist to send a thank you bouquet to Carol for all her help. For as tired as Monica was when she went to bed, she found herself swirling in weird dreams and bouts of hot flashes and cold spells. It worried her that she might have a fever. That would be another day off work and another day's lost wages. If you need another day off, Monica, then you take another day off. Geez, what is wrong with you? She chastised herself. You're not curing cancer. You're making coffee. Get a hold of yourself. That's what your emergency fund is for. Once she put her worries in perspective, she seemed to calm down. Sleep came. Her mind settled. When she woke up to her alarm, she felt clear-headed. The anesthetic in her system had completely worn off, and she was feeling like her old self. Waiting under the covers for a couple of minutes, she anticipated the pain in her jaws to start, but after 5 minutes of being awake, she felt nothing. The holes in the back of her mouth were tender when she prodded them with her tongue. Thankfully, there was no dull throbbing, no headache, just an ache in her belly from being empty. Slowly, she sat up, and still there was no discomfort. After a couple of deep breaths, a good stretch with her arms over her head, and a roll of her neck, Monica got out of bed and shuffled to the bathroom. She snapped on the light, looked at her reflection in the mirror, and stared. In exchange for the usual aches and pains that came with having 4 wisdom teeth removed all at once, Monica looked like she'd been in a serious accident. Her jaws were purple with bruises. Even under her eyes was a little discolored and puffy. Her lips were chapped. No pain at all, but she looked awful. After a deep breath, she tenderly touched her jowls and studied the purple patches while contemplating what to do. Should she go to work and let people see her like this, repeating 1,000 times that she had her wisdom teeth pulled? Or should she sit it out for a couple of days and see how she looked then? "I'll lose my mind," Monica said to her reflection, before snapping on the water in the shower and getting ready for the day. She looked cute in her new teal and pink Browns Grounds t-shirt she had made for herself. Once in her truck, after all her errands were run, she pulled up at her spot on the main drag, between the giant statue of the lark and the park bench, got out, put up her chalkboard display of the specials for the day, and opened for business. It didn't take long for her face to become the main attraction. Some people looked but said nothing, coming to their own conclusions that she was in a car accident or the victim of some kind of beatdown. Most of her regulars asked, and when Monica replied, "You should see the other guy," with a smirk, they would laugh with her. The truth was much more boring, but it was her friend and regular customer Marianne whom Monica didn't suspect would nearly burst into tears. "What happened?" she gasped, her eyes wide with worry. "It's nothing, Marianne, really. Nothing? Oh my gosh, let me see what happened to you." Without waiting for an invitation, Marianne hurried around the back of the truck, climbed up, and looked at Monica beneath the fluorescent lights. They made the bruises look even worse than they were. "You poor thing. Does it hurt?" "Oh, it's got to hurt." "No, honestly, Marianne, it doesn't hurt a lick. It just looks bad, that's all." as Monica stepped back to the order window to quickly fill an order for 3 coffees and a special lavender tea. "You should be home and resting," Marianne insisted. "No, I'd lose my mind," Monica said before handing the coffees and tea to the patron at the window, then taking their money. "And it's true, it looks bad, but I'm not in any pain at all. If it weren't for the holes in my jaw, I wouldn't know I had any work done." Marianne took a deep breath and smiled. "I'll take my usual." She turned and exited the truck, only to appear in front of the window, clicking her tongue and shaking her head. "This one is on me. I hate that I gave you such a scare." "Oh no, I'm paying. You're going to need the money for the makeup you'll need to cover all that up." "You're right. That'll be $3, and feel free to leave a tip," Monica snapped back, rolling her eyes before chuckling. "I'll be sure to bring you a few more books, too, in case you decide to take a couple of days off to rest, or spare your innocent patrons from seeing your injuries and feeling bad for you. Is there anything I can do for you at all? It's not like I'm in a hurry to go to work. If you've got some books to spare, I'd love to have them. Other than that, I'm all set, but thank you for asking." "You're sure? You don't want me to pick you one of those turtlenecks that come up over your chin?" Marianne needled. "Very funny. It's not that bad," Monica chuckled as she touched her jaw. "That's what you think," Marianne continued to tease, before she looked at her watch. For the second time, her eyes bugged, and she gasped. "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be late. I'll never hear the end of it. Did you know City Hall comes to a standstill if I'm 2 minutes late? They can't figure out the coffee pot without me there." "Coffee pot? You mean you aren't telling them all to come here? Then take this." Monica quickly grabbed a bag of her premium dark roasted ground coffee beans. "Give them a treat. Maybe they will forgive your tardiness." Marianne took the bag and smiled. She assured Monica she would, before heading to her office, hurrying across the street with her big, clumsy bag and a purse just as bulky slung over her shoulder. Bravely, she attempted to sip her hot coffee before the light changed from walk to don't walk. Monica thought Marianne was a bit of a live wire. Although they never hung out outside their morning routine of exchanging coffee for money, Monica found her to be nice and an invaluable friend when it came to Monica's never-ending battle with the ladies of the Edgewater Community Council. The waters around the Edgewater Community Council, or ECC as the cool kids referred to themselves, had been calmed for the past couple of months, but it was inevitable that a member would stroll by and comment rudely on the location of Brown's Grounds coffee truck in conjunction with the Garden Memorial for Miriam and Roland Leach. The ECC was constantly trying to get Monica to move her truck, to relocate, or to be put out of business, also the memorial could be seen. It wasn't like she was blocking access to Graceland. It was a flat memorial that looked more like a cemetery marker than a dedication. That didn't matter. The ladies of the ECC wanted everyone in Millpond to have access, and they might be quiet now, but like a hornet's nest at dawn, it was only a matter of time before they started trying to sting again. But the feud that rivaled the Hatfields and McDuckins was not worth a second thought at this moment. Suddenly, Monica saw the one thing she hadn't considered when contemplating taking the day off due to her swollen face. She'd bear the pain, the discoloration, the strange looks and comments, but she'd forgotten how she would appear in the eyes of one man, and it was too late now. Sheriff Nathan Thomas, the most handsome lawman Monica had ever laid eyes on, was strolling in her direction, as he'd done almost every morning since she set up shop. He walked right up to the order window and looked right in her face. "I'm thinking of going a little wild this morning. How about adding a little cream to my coffee?" is all he said, and he smirked. Chapter 2. Monica eyeballed him and could barely contain her own smirk. She fixed his coffee, handed it to him through the order window, and watched as he stuffed a few dollars in her tip jar. No matter how many times she offered him his coffee on the house, he always paid a little more than the coffee cost. He took a sip and let out a satisfied sigh. "You made a good pot, thank you." Monica folded her arms and shook her head. Aren't you going to say anything? About what? She pointed to her jaws and cheeks and under her eyes, then shrugged. I can only imagine what the other guy looks like. Monica laughed out loud before she winced. It was the only time her surgery hurt, and it figured the pain was caused by laughing. She pinched her brows and put her hand to her jaw, but still laughed. Does it hurt? It didn't until you showed up, she replied. Glad I could help, Nate chuckled back. Suddenly, a loud ahem cut through their banter. Nate turned to his left. Monica peeked further out the window. Standing there with a judgmental grimace on her face was Tawny Clifford, the Edgewater Community Council president, retired for the past decade, that still wielded more power within the ECC than Rhonda Davis, the current president. Tawny was a round woman who dressed like she was always on her way to Sunday service, complete with kitten heels and matching hat. Her fingers were covered with expensive rings, her nails were always manicured, and she always paid with exact change and never left a tip. Even in pouring rain, she would count out her pennies to make sure she didn't accidentally leave an extra cent or two. Granted, she was never a large tipper, but usually left the change. Even in pouring rain, she would count out her pennies to make sure she didn't accidentally leave an extra cent or two. Granted, she was never a large tipper, but usually left the change. This time, she insisted on paying exact change. Going to keep track of every penny, Monica thought. As if reading her mind, Tawny looked directly at Monica with a simper on her face. I'm sorry, but I'm not changing the price for no whipped cream, Monica said flatly. That'll be $5.80. As usual, Tawny counted out exact change, took her drink, and, without so much as a thank you, turned her back and waddled quickly across the street as the lights changed, teetering in her heels. Monica looked at Nate, who had politely stepped aside for Tawny to place her order. She's a ray of sunshine, isn't she? Monica asked. That woman is a pillar in the community. Her husband has been on the hospital board for decades, and she has been very generous with his money, Nate replied before taking another sip of his coffee. They give her an empty office at City Hall just to make her happy, so her husband continues to write those fundraising checks. That must be why she pays with exact change. Gotta keep track of every penny. Did you see those rubies on her finger? Yikes, Monica chuckled. Truthfully, I'm surprised she comes here at all, especially since the ECC is constantly trying to get me to move. Don't you find that a little strange? And did she seem drunk as she went across the street, or is it just me? I think when it comes to good coffee, people will drive miles out of their way to get a cup. That's what I think, Nate said and smiled. Okay, something is up with you. That look on your face is starting to annoy me, Monica snapped. What look? That smile, she replied. You are annoyed by me smiling at you? Yes, she put her hands on her hips and shifted from her right foot to her left. Why would that annoy you? Because you didn't even ask me why I look this way. I look awful, like I've been in a fight or a car accident, and you haven't asked or even seemed concerned in the least, Monica huffed. Her chastising only made Nate smile more, making him even more handsome in his jeans, badge, and flannel shirt. And she knew that if she stood close to him, he'd smell spicy, because he always did. His cologne was wonderful. First, if it were anything serious, you wouldn't have come to work. I've learned that much about you. And second, you forget that I'm the sheriff. I know everything that goes on in Millpond, he said and arched his right eyebrow. You do you? Yep, I've had my wisdom teeth removed too, except my jaw bruised, swole, and throbbed so badly that I was in bed for 2 days. I didn't care if the bank got robbed or aliens landed on Main Street. I was not coming in. When I did come back to work, I was in such a bad mood from the pain that I think I wrote more parking and speeding tickets than any other officer had done all year. I'd never pegged you for a sissy, Monica teased. He narrowed his eyes at her, making her laugh, and again tenderly touch her jaw. "Does it hurt when you laugh?" Monica nodded. "Good to know," Nate answered and raised his coffee before taking a sip, turning and walking off in the direction of the police station. She touched her jaw and waited for the throbbing he had mentioned, but still, there was nothing. It only ached when she laughed, and even that subsided quickly. The rest of the day was busy. Monica was on her feet the whole time. Her face was the topic of conversation among many of her regulars, and strangers looked at her suspiciously before she explained that she'd had her wisdom teeth pulled. That answer was greeted with a nod, sometimes a gruesome story of a wisdom tooth removal gone horribly wrong. By the time she was closing for the day, she was tired, but not exhausted. It was that good kind of tired that came with knowing her hard work had paid off. She'd be able to keep the lights on for another month and put bologna in the fridge. Life was good. After a string of green lights on the way home, Monica pulled into her driveway and was looking forward to a hot shower, pajamas, maybe a tea in her backyard, and a couple of pages of her latest romance novel. With a tiny garden of wildflowers starting to grow and a couple of tomato plants showing off some green globes, she enjoyed her backyard more and more. It was like an addition had been added to her house for the cost of seedlings and some dirt. But after she settled in her lawn chair, book in one hand and a glass of wine in the other, she heard her phone ring. Monica should have known that things were going too well. She wondered who could possibly be calling her. If Carol wanted to check on her, she'd just cross the street. She only wished it was Nate, but her gut told her it couldn't be him. He had no reason unless he was concerned about how she was feeling. Could it be? Maybe? She pushed the idea out of her mind, but could sense it sticking around the edges, hopeful and slightly giddy. "Hello? Is this Monica Brown?" a female voice demanded. "Yes, who is this?" Monica snapped back. Who on earth would call someone with that kind of tone and attitude? After what sounded like a sob, the voice boomed back. "This is Jessica Lee Clifford." Monica waited. "Tawny Clifford's daughter." "Okay. How can I help you?" "Help me? You want to know how you can help me? How about you turn yourself in? That would be a big help." Monica raised her eyebrows. "Miss Clifford, Jessica Lee Clifford, I don't know what you are talking about. You know darn well what I'm talking about. I'm not going to let you get away with this. I knew when my mother told me about what you were doing to the Leach's memorial what kind of person you were. You're going to pay. I promise you that." Jessica Lee Clifford shouted, making Monica pull the phone away from her ear. "Miss Clifford? Jessica Lee Clifford?" Monica was talking to a dead line. The woman had hung up. Tawny Clifford. Why was that name so familiar? Why would her daughter be calling her and shouting? Monica snapped her fingers and remembered the round woman wearing kitten heels, wobbling across the street with her coffee this morning. Was this all because she ran out of whipped cream and charged her full price? Even if she did deduct the cost of the spritz of whipped cream, it would have only been about 10 cents. Besides, how would her daughter know she even had a coffee unless her mother mentioned it? And why would she do that? Maybe Jessica Lee Clifford had been drinking and this was just one big drunken misunderstanding. Monica shrugged after hanging up her phone and went back outside. With her book in one hand, she scratched her head with the other. Should she call Carol and tell her about it? Should she try calling that number back? Nah, just forget it, her conscience said. But like a hangnail, the phone call kept her attention and annoyed her. She daydreamed as she looked at her backyard, trying to recall if anything weird had happened that would trigger someone to call her like Jessica Lee had. Monica snapped her fingers and sat up straight. She had to wait. I was talking with Nate, and Tawny was standing there. I don't know for how long.
That's probably what it's all about. She probably complained to her daughter that I wasn't prompt enough and made her late for her manicure or something. Plus, that I didn't give her the whole drink for free because it was sans whipped cream. She eased back into her chair and shook her head. That's how those dredge hawker community council people are. Everyone is supposed to jump for them. Well, I made her a delicious drink and she paid exact change. As far as I can see, there was no damage done, so get over it. Now Monica was really annoyed, almost angry. The ECC had been picking on her since she started her business. This was just another in the long list of grievances they had against her. None of it mattered. She had all her fees paid, her permits displayed, her papers filed. There was nothing anyone could do to close her up or make her move. Nothing but the age-old method of plain and simple intimidation. Monica had decided long ago that no one was going to intimidate her into giving an inch. The affair between Lord James and the maidservant Caroline in her book could no longer hold her interest, so she went inside, poured herself half a glass of white wine, and went back to what she considered the best seat in the house. In her jammies with bare feet, enjoying the warm evening, she stewed as the sky went from blue to purple. Just as she'd gotten comfortable, she heard gravel crunching under tires and an engine cut off. Now what? She huffed, getting up and peeking around the side of her house. A car door slammed just as she saw Nate walking up the front porch steps. "Back here," she called. He looked in her direction and saw Monica waving. Slowly, he strolled down the steps and walked along the gravel driveway that led to the small backyard. "I'm glad you're home," he said without a smile. "Hey, I gotta tell you something. I just got the strangest phone call from someone named Jessica Lee Clifford. She said she was Tawny Clifford's daughter. She said—" Nate put up his hand. "She is. I know Jessica Lee. Monica, Tawny Clifford is dead." Monica stood there and looked at Nate like he had suddenly started speaking Chinese. She tilted her head to the right. "Okay, what happened?" "We don't know yet, but I need to ask you a couple of questions." "Me? What for? All I did was serve her coffee. You were there." Nate shifted from one foot to the other and then motioned for Monica to sit down. She looked at him from under pinched eyebrows but did as he instructed. That was when she remembered she was in her pajamas, a t-shirt 8 sizes too big, and a pair of sweatshorts of similar size. Her feet were bare. Thankfully, she'd painted her toenails, so she didn't feel totally unkempt. Jessica Lee called 911 this evening around 6 o'clock. She'd stopped at her mother's office to pick something up for a fundraiser the town is having in a couple of weeks. "Fundraiser? For the town? I'm part of the town. How come I didn't hear anything about it?" "It's more for the bank and pharmacy and city government and stuff like that," Nate said with his chin down like he wasn't trying to insult her. "Would you be going?" "The police department would probably be part of it, yes," he replied with his chin back up. Monica nodded. She understood why she wasn't part of the festivities. Not enough influence. No matter. That still didn't explain why the sheriff of Millpond was at her house in an official capacity. When Jessica Lee walked into the office, she found her mother on the floor. She'd been dead for a couple of hours. "Nate, you can't think I had anything to do with it. I was at work. There are at least 24 people who can put me there all day, including yourself."
After a deep breath, Nate took a step forward, knelt, and took Monica's hands in his. "Tawny Clifford had a note in her hand with your name on it, plus the cup from your truck. It looked like she'd been drinking it just before she died." "My name on a note? What did it say?" "Nothing. It was just your name." My name, Monica Brown, was on a note in her hand, and Jessica Lee Clifford thinks this means I killed her mother because she had a cup from my coffee truck? I think the bigger question is why a dead woman has my name on a piece of paper in her dead hand. Maybe I'm next on some crazy person's hit list. Did Jessica Lee ever think of that? Monica huffed while looking around her yard for signs of said crazy person. "Calm down," Nate said, putting his hand on her shoulder, but that didn't stop Monica from standing up.
How can you tell me to calm down? This is insane, Nate. I may not like any of those women with the ECC, but you know I'd never hurt anyone. Not intentionally. Ever. Now, would they intentionally hurt me? I can't say for sure the answer's no. Monica, you don't have to convince me. They're going to do an autopsy. There are a lot of holes in the story that I think will be filled once the coroner gives me his report. And how long will that take? I've got a business to run, and the way gossip spreads in this town, I might be out of business already. I don't think that will be the case, Nate said. Monica ran her hair through her head and looked again out at her yard. Half an hour ago, she was happily engrossed in her romance novel, and now she was suspected of murdering one of the elites of Millpond. What about her husband? You said he was a bigwig here in town. Isn't it usually the spouse who commits these kinds of murders? He does have an alibi. He's on a fishing trip with Jessica Lee's husband, his son-in-law. Isn't that convenient? Monica scoffed. Look, I don't want you to worry. It was my duty to tell you about this. I told Jessica Lee I would handle it, and I'll talk to her about threatening you. I won't stand for it. Monica looked at him and wished she could believe him, but a feeling snuck into her heart that had never been there before. Distrust. Yeah, okay, Monica said. Nate was a member of this community. Monica was still considered an outsider. Even though she'd gotten to know half the people in town and was kind to all of them, she knew this was not going to be good for business. Even when it was proven she had nothing to do with Tawny Clifford's untimely death, there would still be talk. There was always talk. You sound like you don't believe me, Nate replied. All Monica could do was shrug. The look of hurt on his face was something she'd never seen before, but she didn't care, not at the moment. Who was there to care about her feelings, her business, her safety? After all, she was just threatened. It seemed like there was no one. I've got to go talk to a few other people. Would you promise me something? Monica looked at Nate and nodded. Would you go to work tomorrow like nothing happened? Dress as pretty as you always do, smile and laugh with your customers, make Millpond's best coffee, and leave the worrying to me. Can you do that? Monica felt tears sting her eyes and bit her tongue to keep them back. Instead, she smirked. Yeah, I'll do that. That's my girl. I'll let you know what I find out. Promise? Nate stepped up to Monica and again took her hands in his. Cross my heart. She looked up at him. For a minute, they looked into each other's eyes. Had it been any other day, under any other circumstances, Monica would have let herself get lost in them. But right now, with this sudden storm cloud hanging over her, all Monica could do was search for the flicker of a lie or doubt. She didn't see any, but her conscience assured her that even if she didn't see them, it didn't mean they weren't there. Had she known that all Nate wanted to do was pull her into his arms, kiss her full on the lips, and whisper everything was going to be fine, she might not have said what she did. I wish I could believe you. The words just tumbled out of her mouth. It was as if she'd slapped him. Nate just nodded his head, let go of her hands, and walked out of her backyard. She heard him get into his truck, pull out of the driveway, and speed away. Monica didn't sleep well that night. When her alarm went off, she was sure she'd only gotten about 45 minutes of sleep altogether. But she did as Nate suggested. After a lukewarm shower to get her blood pumping and the puffiness around her eyes down, she put on her cutest jeans, a new Browns Grounds t-shirt, a pink baseball hat, and her comfy gym shoes. Today would be an indicator of the future of her business. It was not quite what she had expected.
She opened at 6 in the morning. The smell of coffee was strong. Special pastries were listed on the chalkboard in front of the order window and paired with a specialty drink. There was no way she was going to be short on whipped cream. She'd snagged several cans from the convenience store on her way in. For some reason, Monica felt like she was auditioning. For what? Millpond's coffee provider? Like every customer might be a scout or secret shopper who would give her a thumbs up or thumbs down, depending on whether she smiled, if she chatted pleasantly, or if she looked like she could have murdered someone. At first, people seemed to be walking by. Monica was sure they were intentionally avoiding eye contact. Something was up. She'd been open for 5 whole minutes. Where was the rush of regulars who would never believe idle gossip? Where were the people ready to scream from the rooftops that no one who made coffee with this much care could have possibly killed anyone? She looked at her watch. 6 minutes. She'd been open 6 whole minutes, and no one had come up to the... Never mind. The panic subsided. The light across the street had gone from the orange "Don't walk" to the white "Walk" sign, and a dozen familiar and unfamiliar faces approached her coffee truck. That did it. The curse was broken. In fact, Monica found herself on her feet for the next 3 hours. Every time she went to take a breather, someone came to the window. No one had glared at her, pointing a judgmental finger to accuse her of killing Millpond's beloved Tawny Clifford. In fact, Monica wondered if anyone had heard about the incident at all. That had to be it. The curse hadn't started because the word hadn't spread yet. Tomorrow her business was going to go belly up. That's what was going to happen. Oh, Monica, get a hold of yourself. Just as Monica was about to perch on the stool to give her feet a quick rest, a familiar voice chirped through the window. "Yoo-hoo, anybody home?" called Marianne. "Oh, hi, Marianne. You're a little later today. Did you decide to sleep in a little?" Marianne rolled her eyes. "Are you kidding? I got to work right on time and was told I'd be questioned by the police after the area had been secured." "What?" Monica put her hand to her throat. She knew what this was all about, but didn't dare utter the words. People might think, and Marianne might think, that she had something to do with all the questioning. Even though Marianne hadn't mentioned Tawny Clifford by name, she knew this had to be about that. It had to be. "Didn't you hear? Tawny Clifford was found dead in her office yesterday. They suspect foul play," Marianne said, as if there was something wrong with Monica for not knowing this already. Did she think she was guilty? Had she heard that Tawny was clutching a piece of paper with Monica's name on it? Was she working for the police and promised them a confession? Was she wearing a wire? Monica couldn't tell as she casually tried to spy any unusual bumps or wires sticking out of Marianne's clothes. "Get a hold of yourself. This is Mary Ann. She's your friend," Monica's conscience said. "You're acting like a guilty person when you didn't do anything but serve that woman coffee. Calm down." After a couple of deep breaths, she quickly acted like she didn't know anything about the death and asked for more details. "Yes, she was found by her daughter, collapsed in her office yesterday. I think it was natural causes. The woman drank, you know," Marianne said, before looking over her shoulder, then back at Monica. "I heard that on Sunday, if you went through her trash, there was nothing but empty booze bottles, mostly vodka." "You're kidding." Monica saw a light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, a woman was dead, and a piece of paper with Monica's name on it was still in her cold, dead hand upon discovery. But if she drank, well, that meant she could have just died of natural causes, nothing that had anything to do with Monica. As a habit that had formed over the past 24 hours, Monica touched her jaw to check the tenderness. She wasn't sure if it was stress from the situation or if her mouth finally caught up to the surgery that had been performed. Was it starting to hurt, or was it just stress? She couldn't tell, and wasn't about to leave the window for a pain pill that might make her sloppy and quite possibly crash her truck if she tried to drive it. Nope, she'd struggle through any pain. "That is too bad. Perhaps I'll send flowers. She did buy coffee from me." "What do you think she drank her alcohol in the morning?" Marianne whispered for dramatic effect. There was no one within hearing range to eavesdrop. "What?" "Oh yeah, she didn't just drink at home. She was sloshed by noon almost, every day. She'd add it to her coffee." "Mary Ann, why are you telling me all this?" Monica whined and rubbed her head. She could feel a headache coming on. All she could think was that if there was alcohol in the coffee cup with Brown's grounds on it, Monica just shot up to the top of the suspect list. Combined with her headbutting with the ECC, she might as well go pick out her own orange prison suit. Was this really happening?
Because it's news. It's going to be all over the building by the time I get there. Nothing will get done today. But why should today be any different from every other day at City Hall? She chuckled, before she waved, turned, and headed across the street.
Monica forced a smile, but as she touched her jaw, she felt a dull throb starting. After a couple of deep breaths, she thought she'd be able to manage without taking any of her medication. The idea of taking prescription pills had not changed. Maybe she'd down a Tylenol if she got desperate, but at the moment, she was still unsure if she really needed anything. The foot traffic slowed like it usually did at this time while people were at their jobs and eagerly waiting for lunch hour. Monica went about her usual routine of cleaning, refilling, and preparing for the midday rush with fresh coffee. When 12:30 rolled around and she had only had 3 strangers visit her window for some black coffee, the doubts from this morning resurfaced. The friendly face she saw in the window made her feel instantly better. When she smiled, she felt an ache in her jaw, but that didn't stop her. "Did you get the plate number of the truck that hit you?" "Very funny," Monica replied, and began making her neighbor her usual sweet and frothy favorite vanilla and caramel coffee drink. "Did you offer to nurse you back to health?" "Are you out of your mind?" "No, Monica. Are you out of yours by not using this surgery to your advantage?" "I've got too much on my mind right now to think about romance." Monica handed Carol her drink and waved Carol off when she offered to pay. "What's the matter?" "I don't know if you heard, Carol, but Tawny Clifford—" "Oh yeah, she died. They found her dead as a doornail in her office yesterday. I'll bet she was drunk," before taking a careful sip of her hot drink. Monica shook her head and stared at her friend, then looked out at the traffic rolling past. Am I the only one who didn't know she drank, or the only one surprised she's dead? "You're still relatively new in town. I know you've had more exchanges with the Edgewater Community Council than most people in the past decade, but that doesn't mean anything. Those women know how to keep a secret, from certain people," Carol teased. "Yes, I found out she was a retired ECC member. I heard she and her husband spread their money around town. As if that isn't annoying enough, she died with a piece of paper in her hand that had my name on it," Monica blurted. She was sure it made her jaw feel slightly better for just a few seconds. "What?" Monica explained what Nate had told her. She also mentioned what Marianne said, that Tawny added hooch to her morning coffee that she always bought with exact change from Brown's Grounds. "This is awful, Carol." "Did you poison her?" Carol held her cup at the edge of her lips. "No, of course not. How could you even ask me that?" "So you'd hear how silly it sounds," she replied with a wink and took another sip. "Your bedside manner is really off the charts, you know that." Monica chuckled and rubbed her jaw. Tawny Clifford was a lush, a very handsome, functioning, and wealthy lush, but a lush nonetheless. She owned a boutique that all the hoity-toity shop at, her husband makes money in his sleep, her daughter is grown and successful in her own right. Well, she married well, let's put it that way. I remember when she was dodging the cops as a teenager. Regardless, Tawny lived a very comfortable life. If she couldn't find happiness in that, but somehow could at the bottom of a bottle, I don't feel all that sorry for her. "But did you hear what I said?" She was clutching a piece of paper in her hand when they found her, Monica whispered. "Really? So what?" After a deep breath, Monica nodded her head. "The whole situation is weird." "That is weird. Maybe she's leaving you in her will?" Carol teased. "I doubt that. I have to tell you that I had an Uncle Gary who was on the eccentric side. He read anything he could get his hands on, so long as it was no bigger than an inch in length. Well, one time he got sick, and he wrote down his enemy on a piece of paper and stuffed it in his shoe. He walked around with it in there for a couple of days. Wouldn't you know it, Thad Beetle developed an ingrown toenail so severe they almost had to amputate the toe. Carol finished her tale with a nod and another sip of her drink. Monica blinked. "That's it?" "I'm just saying that That Tawny Clifford was putting a hex on me to get an ingrown toenail? Maybe not an ingrown toenail, maybe something else. Maybe she wanted you to get carpal tunnel, or a doozy of a hangnail, or maybe it's nothing at all. I guess I'm not really being all that helpful. No, not at the moment, Monica chuckled. I don't know why she'd have your name on a piece of paper, but I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. All you did was serve her coffee. That's it. You really do have the best coffee in town. Thanks. I just wish I wasn't involved at all. Even when they prove I had nothing to do with it, I'm going to be that woman they suspected of murdering Tawny Clifford. I don't see how that will be any good for business. Are you kidding? I heard that people seek out the place Jeffrey Dahmer bought his spices and seasoning, Carol said with a straight face that Monica almost hesitated, thinking she was telling the truth. You're so full of baloney, Monica said before laughing, despite knowing it would hurt. Hey, look at it this way. When you and Nate are old and sitting on a porch swing after being married a couple of decades, you're going to look back at this and say, Honey, do you remember when I got all wrapped up in the death of that civil servant, Tawny what's-her-name? And Nate will reply, What did you say? Carol laughed as she put her hand up to her ear.
Monica laughed too, but quickly stopped as her jaw twinged. By the time she was calling it quits for the day, a steady throb had started on the right side of her jaw and had spread to her temple. When she got home, she had nothing on her mind except a hot shower, some hot chicken broth, and some television. The mail brought some more bad news. Property taxes were due. Monica smirked. She had the money and a little left over. Take that, city of Millpond, I'm here for another year.
Millpond's treasurer's office was a bland building next door to City Hall. Not that Millpond's City Hall was an architectural masterpiece. It wasn't. What it was the square brick building in the center of town that most people had to pass at least once a day. The treasurer's office was not quite in the center of town, just half a block away. It was a building of half brick, half aluminum siding where it had been expanded. Monica had been in this building on several occasions when she had her grandfather's house put in her name. The building outside was boring. The interior was no different. Paneling must have been on sale, as all the walls were covered in the fake wooden stuff. The carpeting was a well-worn, corporate-style gray-blue, with a plastic runner down the heavily trafficked middle parts. There was a bulletin board with pamphlets about rules of the road, where to vote, and the current politicians in office, from local levels to the governor. As if by spiritual intervention, Monica's eyes instantly found the name Tawny Clifford RET listed on the board. It was like Tawny was following her around. She took a deep breath before walking up to the open counter of the treasurer's office. The people who worked in this office seemed to be as interesting as the wooden paneling. All wore black stretch pants in various sizes and oversized shirts of various patterns. Like how crickets go silent when a person walks near them, the women in the treasurer's office stopped their chatter as soon as Monica appeared at the counter. "Hi, how are you guys doing?" Monica chirped. The faces were familiar, if she didn't know all their names. They went silent, forced smiles, and turned back to their work, except for the woman directly in front of the window. Her nameplate read Judy Olenhouse. Her hair was gray at the roots and brown along the length. When she gave Monica an awkward smile, Monica could tell she smoked as her teeth were yellowed and had wide spaces between them. She was shaped like an apple with legs. "Can I help you?" She studied Monica's face, obviously looking at the bruising. "Hi, Judy. I'm here to pay my property tax." Monica tenderly touched her jaw. "Wisdom teeth. Funny, they didn't hurt right afterward, but now they're starting to give me a little trouble." No one replied. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed one woman get up from her desk, whisper something to the woman behind her that caused both of them to look in Monica's direction. "Oh," she replied without interest. She shuffled papers, took Monica's paperwork, and confirmed the amount. Monica looked around the office and got the strange feeling she was being gawked at.
However, no one seemed to be willing to make eye contact. What in the world was going on? Why was she suddenly feeling like an exhibit in a sideshow at a carnival? Seems like everyone is really busy. That's one way to stay out of trouble, Monica joked, hoping to crack the ice the women seemed to be encased in. Instead, they ignored her banter. Judy took Monica's check, wrote down the number and the amount, and gave her a receipt listing her property tax as paid in full without even the mumble of a thank you. She turned her chair around and stepped away from her desk. Monica picked up her receipt, looked around at whoever was there, and said thank you, but still got no response. As she left the building, she wondered if this was just a bad day at the Millpond treasurer's office, or if it had something to do with the news of Tawny Clifford's death. She felt like Dillinger, public enemy number one, but unlike Dillinger, Monica Brown hadn't committed any crime. Maybe Tawny and her last few minutes alive thought she'd make this grand message for her beloved ECC to set Monica up to look like a criminal. That way, they might be able to strong-arm her into moving her truck away from the Miriam and Roland Leach Memorial. Or maybe they wanted to chase her out of town permanently. The only way that could be done would be if her business failed. So far, she hadn't noticed a serious dip in sales, but it was still early. Feeling like she'd been forced to sit in the corner of class with a dunce cap on, Monica stuffed her receipt in her pocket and walked out of the building. She was sure everyone on the street had seen how she'd been treated. They knew that the cool kids at the treasurer's office were giving Monica Brown the cold shoulder. Pretty soon, the entire town would follow suit. Her business would slowly dry up. No one in Millpond would hire her because they thought she'd been involved in some kind of murder. She'd end up collecting cans and hoarding cats, living out of her truck. "Get a hold of yourself," Monica mumbled and shook her head as she hurried down the steps away from the treasurer's office. "Hey, Monica." Monica turned around to see Nate jogging up to her. She smiled, touched her jaw again, out of necessity, a little embarrassed. It looked just awful, she knew it did. But when Nate didn't smile back, she knew she was in for a little more chilliness. Monica stopped in her tracks and let him trot up to her. She let go of her smile and didn't ask how he was. The look on his face told her everything she needed to know. There was a storm rolling in, and it was headed straight for her. "What now?" Monica snapped. Maybe it was the pain she was feeling in her jaw, or the fact that she had just dropped a couple of $1,000s to pay her property tax, that the tingles and jitters she usually felt when she saw Nate weren't there. Annoyance was. "What do you mean, what now? Did something happen?" "Well, I just got treated like a leper at a meet and greet by the ladies in the treasurer's office. Not weird at all," she huffed, crossing her arms. Nate let out a deep sigh. "I was afraid this might happen." "What?" Monica looked up at the sky to feel the warm sun shining down on her. On such a beautiful day, how could everything feel so off? Like her life had suddenly become a jigsaw puzzle and people were cramming the wrong pieces together without her permission. "There was a leak at the police department," he grumbled. "A what? A leak? What kind of leak? You're talking about plumbing, right?"
I wish I was. Someone got the details about Tawny Clifford's death, and that includes the paper in her hand with your name on it. It's probably all over town by now. Small town grapevines are strong. That's why the ladies in the treasurer's office acted the way they did. They think I have something to do with Tawny's death. And why wouldn't they? She had my name in her hand. I'm a new, spooky resident. I didn't grow up here or have family that settled here before the dinosaurs came. I'm from the big city. We settle all our disputes with murder. So what are you going to do about this? Nate knew Monica had no control over what people would say, but she didn't care. This was not fair. There had to be something Nate could do to help her. Nate, as if reading her mind, cleared his throat. "There isn't anything I can do about the gossip at this point." Monica felt her entire body slump. Deep down, she knew what Nate said was true, but a part of her hoped he might stomp up the stairs to the treasurer's office and put those old biddies in their place, tell them he knew her and she was a good and decent person, and that he was crazy about her. so don't talk smack about his woman or you'll end up in the pokey. Look, I'm going on 4 hours of sleep. You wouldn't believe all the tips and avenues I've gotten since her body was discovered. I heard she was a drunk, Monica blurted. Perhaps it was insensitive. The proper term might have been alcoholic, but Monica was beyond caring. She was being called a suspect in a suspicious death and expected to deal with it like an adult. Dead Tawny Clifford could deal with being called a drunk. Yes, she had a severe drinking problem. Could that be what killed her? It's a total possibility, but we've got to wait for the toxicology test to come back, and we are low man on the totem pole. A slight breeze rustled the trees, making Monica take a deep breath of fresh air. Her hair blew across her face, and before she even thought to brush it away, Nate tenderly tucked it behind her ear. The tingles and jitters returned. "Why did Tawny have my name on a piece of paper in her hand when she died?" Nate whispered. "I don't know. What I do know is that there were quite a few people who would benefit from the old girl passing on. I just have to—" "There are?" "Well, yeah. You don't think people with the kind of money the Cliffords have don't have a couple of skeletons in their closet, do you? If that's the case, why am I being looked at like a hostile organism under a microscope?" she asked, looking at the other pedestrians as they walked by, paying no attention to her or the sheriff. She realized it was probably all in her head, but Monica was sure that with enough time, everyone would be staring and pointing at her. "Maybe it's because you're so cute," Nate replied, making Monica snap her head in his direction. Did she hear him right? He looked off in the distance with that handsome smirk on his face. She couldn't control her own grin, the throbbing in her jaw temporarily forgotten. "You are the outtowner, Monica. Sure, your grandpa lived here his whole life and you visited, but you aren't from here. It's easier to blame you than to think it was anyone from town who grew up here and they see every day." "That's what Carol said," Monica muttered. "Just to put your mind at ease, I'm going to leak a little information to you," Nate said, shifting from one leg to the other, leaning closer to Monica. "What's that?" He looked over his shoulder before speaking. Tawny Clifford was known to have a drinking problem. She also had a boyfriend. "Really?" Monica mused. "She's a member of the Uptown Tennis Club. It's one of those country clubs with a waiting list a mile long and dues that are probably more than your property taxes." Wow, I could think of a dozen better things to spend my money on. "Tell me about it." "So it might look like nothing is being done to help, but I've got a husband and a tennis instructor still to question, not to mention Tawny's business partner at the boutique." "Yeah, my neighbor told me she had a fancy boutique in town." Nate nodded. "Tawny had quite a few close individuals whom we are looking into. You are not a prime suspect, I can tell you that now." "But I am a suspect?" Monica pinched her lips together. "In the same way Big Bird is a bird. You get my meaning?" "Yeah," she smiled at his analogy. "Now, I'm not one to tell you what to do. I'm just trying to put your mind at ease. It would be crazy if you were to snoop around on your own to find out anything about these people. Leave that to the professionals," Nate said, with that smirk still on his lips. For the first time since all the drama had started, Monica felt a wave of relief, in her jaw and in her heart. Nate had given her this information on purpose, another leak in the police department. However, Monica had no intention of telling anyone else where she got her information. Since everyone in Millpond knew everyone else's business, these acquaintances of the deceased were common knowledge. Even if they were only spoken about in whispers, they were still spoken about. Let the snooping begin. The Hamilton residence reminded Monica of George Bailey and his wife Emma in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. It was a refurbished beauty, with hardwood floors and a big wooden staircase in the living room that led to the upstairs. The kitchen was cozy, with a long table and benches instead of individual seats. Monica stood, having just knocked on the screen door, and let herself in. That had become the custom. "Sure, I know the Uptown Tennis Club." Carol said while wiping her youngest son Ronald's nose as he bounced happily on his hip and tried to wiggle his head away from being cleaned off. Care to go inquire about a membership? Monica asked before stretching her hands out to take the baby off her hands for a while. Don't have to, Carol said matter-of-factly. You guys are members? I heard that place was super expensive and had a waiting list a mile long. Oh no, they'd never willingly let us become members. Plus, we'd never spend our money on such a place. Do you know how much their monthly dues are? I'd like at least one of my kids to have college as an option. I'm not throwing our savings away on that place. No, Dud's best friend, Toby Fremont, is a member. He's let us use his pass to take the kids swimming. We went once before, but... But what? Monica asked. Well, let's just say there was an incident and leave it at that, Carol said, standing and called for her husband, Dud, who was in his study reading to Chuck, Sissy, and Hank. What is it, Mommy? We're right about to find out if Bilbo and the dwarves are going to get eaten by the trolls, Dud said, peeking his head out from the other room. Oh, the Hobbit again. I'll make it quick, she said and smiled. Without hesitation, she asked if Toby Fremont would let them use his pass to the tennis club. After commenting on the incident, which neither of them cared to elaborate on, he assured his wife it would be fine. I'm sure everyone has forgotten what happened by now, Dud said, winking at his wife. Let's hope so, Carol chirped back. At first, Monica had thought maybe the kids had caused a ruckus, as children often do in places like country clubs, five-star restaurants, and churches. But as she saw the look on Carol's face and the flush of her cheeks at her husband's reply, it was suddenly clear that perhaps it was Carol and Dud who caused the incident. To be asked for any details might result in her not being able to look at her friends with a straight face anymore. She kept her inquiries to herself. It was a couple of days later that Monica and Carol headed off to the Uptown Tennis Club to snoop around. They dressed in their most inconspicuous ladies who lunch attire, which was understated but classy. It was quite a change from the t-shirt and jeans that Monica usually wore to work. You look gorgeous, Carol gushed. What? Really? Where have I been hiding that little figure? I didn't realize I was hiding it. I just need to be comfortable when I'm on my feet all day. I can't wear this kind of stuff, she said, smoothing her tan pencil skirt and adjusting her white V-neck sweater. You look amazing yourself. Thank you. We're using Toby's pass to have a cocktail on the sun deck, maybe lunch al fresco at the restaurant, and perhaps we'll find out a few things along the way. I don't know how we're going to accomplish that without looking suspicious, Monica said as she slid her right foot out of her heel to wiggle her already pinched toes. Oh, are you kidding? This group is probably where most of the rumors in town originate, Carol replied. After about 20 minutes, they arrived at the Uptown Tennis Club. It didn't look like much from the outside, a long, flat, single-story building that took up an entire block. But the grounds were lovely, with a profusion of colorful flowers, like petunias and marigolds, and I was sure I saw some dahlias. They were hard flowers to grow, and these seemed to be flourishing. Kudos to the landscaper. But they reminded Monica of the Black Dahlia murder, and a shiver ran up her spine. They pulled up the Circle Drive, and a young man in a red polo and black pants bounded out of nowhere to open the car door for Carol. She handed him a couple of folded bills before he took her place behind the wheel. I was surprised at how seamlessly the homeschooling mother of four seemed to blend into this highfalutin environment. She linked her arm through Monica's as they walked through the automatic doors and up to the reception desk. I was happy to let Carol do all the talking. Hello, she said, smiling sweetly at the stocky girl, also wearing a red polo and black slacks, that did nothing to conceal her pudgy figure. The name on her name tag read Bonnie. Good afternoon. Can I help you? Bonnie asked, as she tried not to stare at Monica's bruised jaw.
Yes, we are guests of Toby Fremont. He just gushed about this club and told us we should consider joining. We thought we'd have a few drinks and some lunch. Sound okay to you? Sounds okay to me, Bonnie replied, chameleon-like. We'll just need you to fill out a quick form, and then I'll be happy to show you to the lounge. Oh, a form? What is that for? Carol asked. Monica could sense her nervousness in her voice and felt her muscles tense. What was this all about? Monica casually glanced at her friend and saw her face seemed relaxed, with a gentle smile, though the tendons in her neck were stretched. They were going to get escorted out of the place. Monica could feel it. Another humiliation to add to her seemingly growing list. It's our standard guest form, just to make sure we have your personal information on file. Some guests of our members get a little crazy. If there is any damage or crimes, Bonnie twisted her lips and shrugged, as if to apologize for the intrusion into their personal lives. Of course, some people just don't know how to behave in society, Carol said, rolling her eyes. Is it all right if we have a seat and fill this out? Absolutely, Bonnie said, smiling cheerfully as she handed Carol a clipboard. We'll also need a copy of your driver's license. Of course, Carol purred.
The lobby of the country club was a tribute to all the tennis players and prestigious members throughout its 80 years of existence. Yellowed pictures in thick gold frames lined the walls, perfectly complementing the trophies displayed in two glass cases. There was also a gift shop that sold polo shirts with the elegantly embroidered Uptown Tennis Club logo, a vast array of tennis shoes, rackets, balls, workout gear, and other trinkets that Monica was dying to see the price tags on. "I'm gonna see what the elite are buying," Monica whispered and pointed to the gift shop. Carol nodded as she fished her license out of her purse. A ding went off as Monica stepped over the threshold of the gift shop. She strolled through the maze of racks, peeked into the glass counters, and looked at all the tennis rackets on the wall. She picked up a teal-colored racket that matched the colors of her coffee business. The price tag read $300, but it had no strings. Before she embarrassed herself by asking about why there were no strings, Monica caught sight of the placard on the wall that read, "Stringing additional $50." "It's cheaper than golf," she muttered as she continued to walk around. Finding the tackiest floral shirt for women prominently displayed with UTC embroidered on the tip of the collar, Monica looked at the price. The shirt cost as much as an unstrung tennis racket. She rolled her eyes and put it back. There was no reason to look at the price of tennis shoes. They'd be way out of her league. There were tennis racket earrings, gold and silver charms, Zippo lighters, and a dozen other trinkets that Monica couldn't imagine buying. With a sigh, she left the gift shop with nothing to buy for herself or her friend for all Carol was doing for her, which, judging by Carol's face, was a lot. "Oh boy," Carol let out a long sigh. "What's the matter with you? Why are you having a problem filling that out?" Monica tapped the clipboard as she scooted close to her friend on the love seat, facing the huge window that lined the front of the building. Carol cleared her throat. She said, "It was just after the baby was born. Toby told us to get away for a weekend, and during that time, he gave us his visitor's pass for here. Well, Dud and I had a great time. Maybe too good of a time. This form asks if I've ever been here before. Was I involved in anything that might be construed as scandalous?" She shrugged as Monica looked right at her. "You're kidding. That application actually has the word scandalous on it?" Monica thought Carol had to be exaggerating, but without hesitation, she pointed to the word. There it was, in black and white, clear as crystal. Scandalous. "I'll be a monkey's uncle," Monica said as she read the paper. "I can't believe that every person in this place is completely scandal-free. You've got to be kidding me. Look at that guy over there." Monica pointed to a tall man with a spare tire around his waist, in all white tennis clothes that matched the cap of white hair on top of his head. "You know he's got a scandal or two up his sleeve. And that woman—" Carol stifled a laugh as she looked where Monica was pointing.
No, Monica. Oh, yes. The fact I'm guessing she's at least a month older than Methuselah just screams scandal. And let me just say that if they were to be ranked, she'd outrank you by 9, maybe 10 scandals. So, tell me, what did you do? What was so scandalous? Well, it was me and Dud. Of course it was. Monica narrowed her eyes and spied Carol with every fiber, half expecting Carol to reveal something so embarrassing that it would make her shake her head and storm out. Carol looked over her shoulder, then focused on the paper in front of her. She scanned the document, took a deep breath, and then, with raised eyebrows, filled in the blanks, checked off the boxes, and with a flourish, scribbled her signature at the bottom. She stood up, adjusted her purse strap, and marched up to the reception desk, cheerfully handing Bonnie the clipboard and her driver's license. "It'll just be a moment," Bonnie said. When Carol strolled back to Monica, she bounced her eyebrows. "Carol, what did you do?" All Monica got as a reply was a shrug. Carol was about to tell her the indiscretion when a young man approached them. He was wearing black pants and a polo shirt from the gift shop. "Ladies, I'll be happy to escort you to the lounge. Here is your driver's license back, and here are your badges," he said pleasantly as he handed them each a bright fluorescent green badge with the word guest printed on it. Talk about a class system. Still, Monica saw Carol instantly relax as she nodded. They followed the young man, whose name tag read Serge, and listened as he gave a mini speech about the clubhouse, what famous members it had hosted since its founding, and what celebrities and politicians had visited over the years. "We expect our representative from the House to pay us a visit with his wife sometime this week," Serge said proudly. "Whose house?" Carol asked. "The House of Representatives," Serge replied. "Do you know who that is?" Monica whispered. "Does it make a difference?" Carol replied with a titter. They wove down a long hallway, slipped past the gigantic weight and exercise room, past the entrances to the locker rooms, and finally to a vestibule that opened up to a lounge that looked more like a spa. "Here we are. Is there anything else I can do for you ladies?" Serge asked, obviously waiting for a gratuity. Carol was on top of it. She reached in her pocket and pulled out a 20. Monica was afraid she was making a mistake. That was probably their gas money to get back home. "Have you ever heard of a member by the name of Tawny Clifford?" she whispered.
Serge looked over his shoulder. "Are you looking for a tennis lesson?" he whispered back with a sly look in his eye. This was obviously not the first time he'd been asked this question. Monica thought that was queer on a dozen levels. Why was he whispering about a tennis lesson? The whole place was based on tennis lessons. Of course, they were pretending to want tennis lessons. They certainly didn't want acting lessons. What kind of place was this? "I'm just thinking about it. What can you tell me?" Carol asked. It was obvious to Monica her friend was getting way too deep into the role of private investigator, but there was no stopping her. "I can have the instructor come to your table," Serge said, smiling innocently even as he looked Carol up and down. "Tawny's instructor," she insisted. Serge nodded. "Of course." He extended his arm, motioning for them to enter the lounge. Carol tipped him the 20. Monica was shocked at the simplicity of it all. She walked into the room ahead of Carol and was sure all music, conversation, and time itself stopped as all eyes were on them. Regardless of how cute Carol thought Monica's figure was, no one noticed anything but the bruises on Monica's face. Carol was being sized up for the audacity of looking too comfortable when she was just a guest and not a member. They found a quiet table by a window looking out on the beautiful green landscape with lush trees and a cobblestone pathway that led to the dozen or so tennis courts. Each court was occupied by someone with gray hair, except for a few young men or women who were obviously instructors. Monica took a seat and watched as Carol sauntered through the place, not at all affected by the stares, even being so bold as to wave. She waved like a politician, acting like they know someone at a rally, pointing and smiling all the while. No one smiled or waved back. "You are a firecracker,"
Monica whispered. What a group of stuffed shirts. It's like a movie where the poor middle-class folk get a glimpse, just a taste of the creme de la creme. My gosh, I'd take my snot-nosed kid's burnt husband and a burnt dinner on the stove over all these people, Carol said with a smile, and looked around again only to wave and point at someone else like they were besties from a sorority. Monica was too busy trying not to laugh to be embarrassed. A waitress in black slacks, a white shirt, and a messy bun piled on her head came to the table. She introduced herself as Lainey. "What can I get you, ladies?" "I'd just like a Coke." "I'll have a virgin Moscow Mule." Lainey smiled, turned, and headed towards the bar. "So what do you think we're going to learn from this guy? Don't get me wrong, I'm glad you threw yourself on the sword of private investigation like you have." Carol polished her nails on her shirt with a smirk. "But what do you think this tennis coach is going to tell us? That yes, he killed Tawny because he was jealous of her husband? If he couldn't have her, no one could? No, I think he'll tell us very little, but we'll see. We had to do something. I wonder if any of these people knew Tawny. This is the lounge. I'll bet everyone in here knew her, especially the bartender." Carol clicked her tongue and shook her head as she looked at the long bar on the opposite side of the room. "Yikes, you're right. We should have sat at the bar." Monica snapped her fingers. Just then, Lainey showed up with their drinks. She smiled pleasantly. "That'll be $17. $17 for a Coke and a seltzer with some flavor?" Monica blurted, causing Lainey to drop her smile immediately. Before their waitress could say another word, Monica smiled and handed her a credit card. "Of course it is. What was I thinking? This is a fancy club." Lainey smirked and took the credit card to the bar. "Could I be a bigger spaz?" Monica huffed. "Probably, but I'm with you on that. $17 is ridiculous, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were being charged the guest prices. Everyone else who is a member gets their Cokes for $1. Carol chuckled as she tapped the green badge of shame pinned on her shirt. "Perhaps." Both women, as if thinking the same thought, took off their guest badges and set them on the table. Just then, a man in a tight Uptown Tennis Club polo shirt and workout shorts strolled into the lounge. He waved to a couple of people before heading over to Monica and Carol's table. "Excuse me, ladies. My name is Logan Farmer. I heard one of you is looking for a tennis instructor, or are both of you?" Logan Farmer was not at all what Monica expected. He had a smile that never left his face, even when he spied the bruises on her jaw. It was a little like the Joker from the old Batman TV show, and his eyes drooped at the sides. Some women might call these bedroom eyes. Monica thought the two features looked conflicting. "Yes, Logan, we both are," Carol said. "Can you sit for a moment?" "Of course." Logan pulled a chair from another table and sat down with them, bouncing a little with excitement that Monica found unsettling for a dude just looking to teach tennis. He smelled nice, of a very expensive cologne. His watch was a Rolex, his tennis shoes were Nike, his nails were buffed to a high shine, and his hair was professionally cut to always look perfectly tousled. If Monica had to guess, he wasn't much older than she was. So how did a guy teaching tennis afford all this? Maybe his family was rich. Maybe he had another job. Maybe he had a wealthy wife. The lack of a wedding band or even a tan line where a ring would be made Monica cross that option off her list. Then it hit her. She was in the presence of a real-life gigolo. "Logan, you were recommended by Tawny Clifford. She spoke very highly of you." "Tawny? Oh, yes. She's been taking lessons from me for a couple of years." His smile wavered, and he shifted in his seat. "It's a shame what happened to her. She's going to be missed. Monica had a long association with her, didn't you?" "Yes, I don't know what I'm going to do now that she's gone. I guess that's why I feel like now's the time to start my tennis journey. Life is too short to sit on the sidelines. Time to go for it." She leaned on her elbow and batted her lashes.
Logan relaxed. He looked at Monica like he'd just realized someone was offering him an ice cream cone, and he hadn't realized how much he wanted one. Well, I think once you iron out all the details of your membership, we can definitely work something out, he purred. Let me clarify one thing, Monica said, leaning a little closer. Are you as good a tennis coach as Tawny made you out to be? She couldn't speak highly enough of you. I don't want to waste my money on the wrong kind of lessons. Do you teach the right kind of lessons? Logan's cheeks went red, but the smile never left his lips. He looked out on the grounds, his right eyebrow arched. I'm not sure I know what you mean, but I hope so. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time the Iceman faced off against Superbrat, and who won? The what? Who? Logan smiled nervously and looked from Monica to Carol and back again before shifting in his seat once more. A tennis instructor who doesn't know the last game between Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe isn't really focused on the sport. So now that we are being honest, what can you tell me about Tawny? I don't have to tell you anything. Just as he was about to get up, Monica put her hand on his. Tawny was murdered. You're a suspect. You can either talk to me or the cops. Considering you don't know anything about tennis, and yet you have that watch, and I'll bet you drive a nice car and a wardrobe to go with it, there might be a whole lot of ladies very embarrassed to have you dragged into the police for questioning. Murdered? The smile was gone. So was the blush in his cheeks. Who did it? Monica looked at Carol, who pinched her eyebrows together like Logan had just spoken Chinese. I said you were a suspect. Obviously, the police don't know who did it yet. Well, it wasn't me, he huffed and crossed his arms in front of him. Do you have any idea of who might have had a reason to kill her? Monica prodded. You know, she was really pushy, especially after a couple of martinis. I admit I like older women. They're more grateful. Oh, brother, Carol rolled her eyes. She bought things for me that I never asked for. I didn't ask her for the clothes or to pay my rent. She offered. What was I supposed to do? Turn her down? That would be stupid. Besides, she was using me. I could never have a serious relationship with anyone because she was always introducing me to her friends and putting in a good word to all of them. I just did what they wanted. I'm really the one who got used. It was me and… You are the victim. Is that what you're telling me? Yeah, that's it. That's it, Logan stuttered. Come on, Logan, give me something I can work with. You could be in hot water for your extracurricular activities here at the club, as well as Tawny's death, Monica urged. She watched his face and was almost positive she could smell the smoke from the gears whirring in his head, trying to concoct a story Monica and Carol would buy. Finally, he swallowed hard and regained some of his Rico Suave demeanor. He arched his right eyebrow and leaned in slightly. Look, I didn't have anything to do with her getting… Logan drew his finger across his throat. But I will tell you this. She told me that her business partner was a real pain in her behind. It wasn't me. I mean, let's face it, Tawny wasn't my only client. You call them clients? Carol frowned and pinched her eyebrows together. Do you believe this guy? Sounds like someone trying to throw us off his scent. No, Logan said a little too loudly. You might be right, Monica chimed in. No, you're not right. Look, I didn't have anything to do with her for a couple of weeks. She said she was going to be busy, wouldn't even be able to meet for coffee. In fact, I don't even think she was in the clubhouse, so you can't prove anything. Hey, where are your badges? Monica leaned forward. I think we've heard everything we need to know. You can go back to whatever it was you were doing before we arrived. Logan leaned back. It was obvious from the screwed-up look on his face that he really had no idea what he'd just done. Monica took a sip of her Coke, Carol sipped her Hergen drink, and they waited for Logan as he slowly got up, pushed the chair back beneath the table he'd taken it from, turned, and left the lounge. Monica looked at Carol. If there wasn't a death involved, I'd be laughing at my head off. That guy is as sharp as a sack of sponges, Carol replied as she removed her green guest badge and set it on the table. Monica did the same. So, Carol, what do you think? Are we looking at a criminal mastermind? Wow, I'm not going to say no. I'll tell you why. A guy who can parade around the grounds knowing full well that he's carrying on with married female members of the club while their husbands pay the dues for this joint is a guy who isn't afraid. Whether it's because he's that dumb or because he's that smart is anyone's guess. Maybe we should tail him. Ick. The last thing I want to see is how Logan Farmer spends his free time, Monica replied with a wrinkled nose. Just as Carol was about to add to the conversation, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Hello, ladies. It was one of the older ladies whom Carol had waved to when she strolled into the lounge. Her hand remained on Carol's shoulder for longer than she liked, an old wrinkled hand with dazzling rings and manicured fingers. Hello? They both said. I noticed you both took off your guest badges. You need to put them back on, she said with a smirk, while snapping her eyes from Monica to Carol and back again. By your pardon? Monica straightened. It's the rules of the club that guests always wear their badges while they are on the premises, so please put them back on. She took her hand away from Carol's shoulder and folded her arms across her chest.
Are you a manager or something? Monica asked. Being the boss of her own business, no matter how small a business it was, she knew how to approach people. This was not it. No, but I know the manager. I can go get her if I have to, the woman smirked again. That won't be necessary. We aren't staying much longer, Carol interrupted. Monica looked at her friend, then up at the club enforcer. Yeah, we've seen all we need to see. We'll be going. You still need to put your badges back on, she widened her eyes. Monica knew this kind of person all too well. She was probably in very tight with the Edgewater Community Council members. She might have even known Tawny. Although Monica would have loved to grill her on her whereabouts the day Tawny dropped dead in her office, she didn't think this busybody had anything to do with it. She'd gossip and make predictions about it, but she didn't come across as someone willing to get her hands dirty in anything more than clubhouse rules and regulations. Let's get out of here, Carol said softly. They stood up, grabbed their purses, and pushed past the woman who by now was quite disturbed that they were ignoring her authority as the Uptown Tennis Club hall monitor. In a final act of rebellion, Carol tossed her green guest badge on an empty table just before they exited the lounge. A collective gasp could be heard, accompanied by the bejeweled woman huffing loudly and complaining about the quality of guests they allowed to sample the grounds. I'm going to find out who gave them a recommendation. They should have their membership revoked, Monica and Carol heard her shouting. We need to hurry out of here before a manager does show up, Carol insisted, linking her arm through Monica's and hurrying toward the door. So what if one does? We didn't do anything wrong. We took off our guest badges. Big deal. I'll tell him right to his face. Monica looked at her friend who was pulling her arm. What is the matter with you? Excuse me, Mrs. Hamilton, we have a small problem, Bonnie called from the reception desk. A tall, lanky manager-type person appeared from nowhere and scowled at the duo. No, you don't. We're leaving, Carol replied and waved with the same fake smile she gave to the people in the lounge. Carol, Monica whispered, Mrs. Hamilton, there will be a fine on the account you are associated with unless you talk to us, the man called out, but Carol didn't stop, and since she was pulling Monica, she didn't either. Carol, what is he talking about? Look, I didn't want to say anything, but the last time I was here a couple of years ago, there was an incident. Hurry, let's get out of here before anyone puts two and two together. Carol, what did you do? It wasn't just me. Dud was involved too, Carol said as the lobby doors opened with a swoosh and they hurried out. Carol let go of Monica's arm to fish her keys out of her purse, staggering, stopping, and finally rushing toward her car with Monica walking briskly behind her. What kind of incident? What could you have possibly done? Let me just say that they need to post certain rules around the grounds if they don't want to discover people in the bushes, Carol said, without a smirk or smile. You and Dud were naked, making out in the bushes, weren't you? Monica stopped, her eyes wide as she shook her head. We were not naked, not even close. It's not our fault that that man hit his ball all the way over the fence. That's a lousy tennis player in my book. They piled in the car, and before the doors were even closed, Carol had the engine on and was backing out of her spot. Did they catch you?
Of course they did, but it was a couple of years ago. That's why Dud and I figured there wouldn't be any trouble. We've been banned from visiting or joining the club. Not that we ever had any desire to do so, even if we did have that kind of money. Carol smiled as she pulled out of the parking lot and got her breathing under control. Why didn't you warn me? I was hoping they'd forgotten, but when I saw that form and all the information they were asking for, I realized that might narrow things down a bit. But hey, we got to pay $17 for 2 drinks, and I think we collected some excellent information from the Uptown Tennis Club Gigolo. Yes, at least we got that. Carol? Yes, my door? Thank you for ruining my chances of getting a membership to the Uptown Tennis Club. Monica tried to keep a straight face. It was useless. The ladies laughed all the way home. Once home, Monica had to admit that the morning had been fun, and she did laugh. Her blood had pumped faster, and the information they gathered was a start. Surely, Logan Farmer was a bigger suspect than she was. She went through her house and changed to work clothes to do a little weeding in her garden. When her phone rang, she didn't hesitate to run inside and grab it. Hello? I don't know who you think you are, but I'm not going to stop until the police have you in handcuffs. You dare show up at my mother's tennis club? How dare you? Monica slammed the phone down. How on earth did Jessica Lee Clifford know where she'd been?
The last thing Monica wanted to do was eat. At least, that is what she thought until Nate suggested it. After getting another call from Jessica Lee Clifford, she was so shaken that she felt the need to tell the police about it. Nate was glad she did. "Don't feel bad," he insisted as they walked into Patty's diner. They had had more than one conversation at Patty's. Usually, their talks ended up with either Monica or Nate stomping out after a string of sarcastic remarks and a romantic tension so thick Patty could cut it with a butter knife. She waved to them from behind the long counter that was peppered with a few regulars. She was an old-school waitress, complete with uniform and name tag, even though everyone in Millpond knew who she was. Without ever asking a question, patrons often spilled the beans about their own lives and sometimes a juicy tidbit about another person, place, or thing. She knew more secrets than Father Joe at St. Catherine's Catholic Church after the sacrament of confession each Wednesday. Patty also had eyes to see, and ever since Monica moved to town, she saw the way her favorite sheriff looked at her. It was only a matter of time before the 2 stubborn mules realized they were meant for each other, but Patty kept that to herself. Monica and Nate found 2 seats at the counter. "Nice to see you both. Monica, honey, please tell me that you got in a couple of good licks yourself," Patty said, looking at Monica's bruises carefully. "Wisdom teeth. I don't think I should pop the dentist. He was just doing his job," Monica replied shyly. "Oh, you know what? You suffer from the same affliction I do. There isn't really anything that can ugly us up. Just gotta live with it, honey. What can I get you guys?" she asked with her pad and pencil ready. "You're sweet, Patty. I don't know," Monica huffed as she snagged the menu from behind the napkin dispenser. "Just a couple of minutes, Patty," Nate replied. Patty winked. "Take your time." "Did you eat anything at the tennis club?" Nate asked, making Monica's eyes bug. "What? How did you know I was there? I fully intended on telling you, but what the heck?" Monica said with her eyebrows raised and a look of defeat on her face. Millpond is a small town. Word of 2 ladies driving a 7-year-old SUV stopping for a couple of non-alcoholic drinks at the Uptown Tennis Club spreads pretty fast. Nate chuckled. "I swear I was going to tell you about it, but I almost forgot after getting that call from Jessica Lee. She sounds dangerous. Is she dangerous?" Monica asked, before glancing at the menu. The smell of fries and grease triggered her appetite. Holes in her mouth were not enough of a deterrent. "I'd like to give you a definite no, she's not dangerous, but what? But Jessica Lee has a troubled past, present, and probably will have a troubled future now that her mom's gone," Nate said, before waving Patty back over. He ordered a BLT, and Monica, who still wasn't sure how hungry she was, ordered a bacon cheeseburger with fries and a chocolate shake. Nate leaned in slightly towards Monica. Without realizing it, she leaned closer towards him as he spoke. "You know the story.
Poor little rich girl. She gets everything she wants. That still isn't enough. The world must revolve around her at any cost. So she dates the bad boy, she experiments with drugs. Finally, when they think she's grown out of her rebellious stage at 17, she gets arrested for breaking into a family friend's house and stealing their valuables. Luckily, she's still a minor, and her mom's money and influence help her remain on house arrest instead of going to juvie. That seemed to be it for a while. That would scare me straight, Monica nodded. Yeah, well, I don't know if scared straight is the right terminology. I think she just came to realize that prison wasn't as glamorous as the uptown tennis club, that an orange jumper wasn't flattering on anyone. Plus, you can't get manicures and pedicures in the big house. She still has that entitled attitude, but now it's her and Dad. Not sure the old man is so willing to keep her in the lifestyle she's become accustomed to. Really? That's the tough love way of parenting. I happen to be a product of such a method. Nate smiled. It was contagious. Me too. If I broke into someone's house to steal their stuff, I'd beg the police to keep me. My parents would hang me out to dry. I wouldn't even steal a glance again. Monica chuckled at her own joke. It made her heart race when Nate laughed too. That's probably part of Jessica Lee's problem. She's suddenly realizing that the safety net is gone, so she's lashing out at you. I'm not saying it's right or tolerable, I'm just telling you what I think. Nate shrugged. But what about Logan Farmer? Is she calling him and threatening him? He didn't behave as if he'd been getting any threatening messages. He actually had the audacity to play the victim card. It was fascinating to watch, if I'm being honest. Monica debriefed Nate on what she and Carol had learned from Tawny's tennis coach, his behavior and the way he spoke. I'll admit, Nate, he seemed surprised about the whole thing. He didn't know Tawny had died. That's funny you should say that. He had contacted the police department late last night to inquire about the truth of the rumor Tawny had died. I had to go and speak to Mr. Clifford today, so I really appreciate you questioning Mr. Farmer for me. He winked and sat up straight when Patty reappeared with his BLT in one hand and Monica's burger in the other. After placing the plates in front of them, Patty scribbled on her pad and set the check between the two of them. No hurry, guys. It looks like you're discussing world events. I'd hate to cut it short on my account, especially when you are getting along so well. Patty grinned, like the cat that had swallowed the canary, before heading back into the kitchen. What's with her? Monica asked. Her cheeks reddened. Oh, she's just being Patty, Nate replied, his own cheeks reddening. After a few minutes of awkward silence, Monica turned to Nate and spoke with her mouth full of burger. So, what do you think of Ogan? What? He chuckled. Monica shook her head, covered her mouth, and quickly chewed and swallowed her food. What do you think of Logan? He's obviously a liar.
Yeah, we're looking into Tawny's phone records and financial records. He was being bankrolled by her, but not just her. It's kind of gross if you ask me. I was raised you meet a woman, fall in love, and it's you and her for the rest of your life. None of this friends with benefits or paying for company. Maybe I'm too old-fashioned. No, that's normal. That's how I feel too. So how come I don't ever see you on any dates? Nate asked. His straightforward question made Monica cough a little. She took a sip of her shake and cleared her throat. I have a business to run. It's not just making coffee. I've got to constantly make sure my permits are current and that I'm fully stocked. I like to keep things exciting and have specialty items, plus keeping my truck running. It's early to bed and early to rise. Yeah, for me too, Nate replied. Yeah, that's one thing we probably have in common, Monica said, and instantly wished she could bite the words back. Instead, she took a big bite of her burger. After another couple of seconds of silence, Nate asked Monica about her favorite movie. She laughed and chatted easily about how she wasn't sure, hadn't sat down to watch a new movie in ages. Then she asked him about music, and they talked about their childhoods and family. Once they finished eating, they sat for a while longer and talked about Tawny Clifford. You didn't tell me what her husband had to say, Monica said. Inside, she was dreading saying goodbye to Nate. As much as she hated to admit it, she was having a wonderful time. But this was just business mixed with a quick bite to eat, wasn't it? He didn't say much, had some kind of board meeting to attend and could only spare a few minutes.
That's odd. His wife is dead, and he's got a meeting to go to that is more important than talking to the police? Yeah, well, I don't think Tawny's visits to the tennis club were lost on Mr. Clifford. He wasn't an older man, but he wasn't stupid. I'll catch up with him. What do you say? Are you ready to go home? Yeah, thanks for supper. I guess I was hungrier than I thought. Yeah, you really packed it in, Nate teased, as he threw a few bills down on the counter and waved to Patty to keep the change. Very funny. After doing your job for me, the least you could do is feed me, she snapped back with a smirk, before scooting around him toward the door. Once back at her house, Nate walked with Monica around to her back porch. Her flowers and small veggie garden were growing nicely. So, was that a date we just went on? Because it felt like a date. It didn't feel like a business transaction, and I didn't get the feeling you just accepted my invitation out of pity. Not totally out of pity, Monica replied without thinking. She couldn't help it. Nate brought out the sassy side of her. If she was too serious, she was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid he might know you're crazy about him? Might know that he actually means something to you? Is that what you're afraid of? That small voice never let her get away with anything. Hey, I'll take it. Boy, your garden is looking nice, Nate said and stepped a little closer. The sun was starting to go down behind the trees that lined the lot across the street. Monica's little house was in the shadow. Next season, I think I'll dig up a little more space and try my hand at some pumpkins. They need a lot of space to grow, Monica said, feeling nerdy and awkward again. She looked up at Nate, who was watching her with a soft smile on his lips. He leaned forward. She lifted her chin. Just as she was sure they were going to kiss, there was a loud rustle at the far end of her yard. They both jumped, half expecting a Bigfoot or a ninja to come bursting through the foliage and attack, but instead they saw a human form running behind the bushes and out through a hole in the fence Monica had never seen before. "Hey!" Nate shouted, pulling his pistol as he took off after the person, but before he reached the back fence, they both heard a car door slam and wheels screech as whoever it was had a car waiting, and they immediately sped away. That was suspicious, am I wrong? Pretty darn suspicious. Here I am, a person of interest in the murder of some socialite I barely knew, and now someone is lurking on my property, trespassing. That's darn suspicious, not to mention blowing the perfect opportunity for a kiss from Nate. Her heart didn't want to admit it was more upset about that than the trespasser, but it was no use. The moment was gone. It was obvious how Nate kicked into sheriff mode and inspected the outside of the house. "It doesn't look like anything has been damaged or vandalized," he said as Monica stood on her front porch. Suddenly, the back seemed too secluded, too dark. "Would you mind checking inside?" she asked, feeling embarrassed. The doors were all locked, no windows were broken, but Monica didn't care. Nate had a sidearm. She only had a rush of adrenaline and maybe her nails to scratch and claw if need be. Thankfully, Nate didn't mind. Without hesitation, he went from room to room and even down in the basement. It was all clear. "Maybe it was just kids," Monica admitted, "but that still doesn't solve my Jessica Lee problem. She doesn't sound like someone who's used to letting things go, especially the death of her mom. I can't help but feel a little bad for her. It was her mom, no matter what their relationship was. But that doesn't give her the right to harass people. I'll be talking to her soon enough. Just hang tight. As I said, you might be a person of interest, but there are half a dozen people who had something to gain by Tawny's death. What did you have to gain?" "Not a thing," Monica replied. She thanked Nate again. He'd told her if anything else happened to call him directly. She promised she would. As she lay in bed that night, she wondered if she shouldn't just call him to calm her nerves. "No, I'm not a baby. The house is safe. I'm locked in. It'll be fine." She soothed herself before snapping off the bedside light. It was approximately 4 in the morning when her phone rang and she saw Nate's number. It was an hour before she normally got up. Maybe Nate was thinking of her. She said hello after clearing her throat. "I'm sorry to wake you." "It's okay. What's up?" "Monica, we've got a problem."
Of course, she thought as an invisible weight settled on her shoulders before she could swing her legs out of bed.
"This is creepy," she said. "I know, but I thought this might be the best place to meet you before the sun came up. I need to show you something." "Please don't," Monica whined. "I can't handle a corpse at this hour." "No, that's not it. Here." Nate handed her a folder. She opened it and saw a lot of forms, lists, and chicken scratch where the coroner had signed off on everything. "What am I looking for?" "The toxicology report says there was hydrocodone in her system. It had an adverse effect combined with the alcohol." "So?" "According to her doctor, she was not prescribed any hydrocodone." "Weren't you prescribed hydrocodone after your procedure?" he asked, as he pointed to his jaw, as if Monica needed to be reminded of her wisdom teeth being removed. "Yeah, I have them in my purse. How did you know?" "It was prescribed to me when I had my wisdom teeth removed. It's common." "Can I see them?" Nate asked, his head tilted to the right, as if to say he was sorry for all this, but she was a suspect after all. Monica pinched her eyebrows together in frustration. She rifled through her purse and found the pill bottle, but when she shook it, there were pills missing. Only one rattled around inside the plastic bottle. Her mouth drew dry. "What's the matter?" Nate asked. "This can't be. I didn't take any of these, but," she said, dropping her purse, then applied her palm to the cap and twisted. When she opened the bottle and looked inside, there was only one pill rolling around. "But what?" "There are 2 pills missing. I didn't take these. They would have made me too drowsy to work. Nate, where are the other 2 pills? They've been with me since I got them." Nate swallowed hard. "Did you ever let your purse out of your sight?" "No." Monica picked up her purse from the floor and rifled through it. Maybe they fell out? But if they did, how did the cap get screwed back on? Did she take them and forget? When her jaw started hurting? She could have sworn she just plowed through it. Maybe she took the pills out and contemplating taking them? Okay, there has to be a logical explanation. Right now, I want you to relax and leave the worrying to me. "You're worrying. That means you think I could really be on the hook." "Nate." Monica wasn't sure if it was the early hour, the frustration, or something deeper she wasn't willing to admit, to that someone was framing her for murder. Either way, tears surfaced in her eyes. There was no hesitation in his movements. Nate stepped up and took her in his arms. She bit her tongue to keep the tears back as best she could and rested her head against his broad chest. He smelled good, but Monica couldn't enjoy it. This was too crazy, and she didn't know what to do. "There's something much more sinister going on here. I promise I'll get to the bottom of it. This doesn't mean anything except that she had the same medication in her system as probably a dozen people in Millpond have right at this moment for some medical issue. I feel like I've got a pit in the middle of my stomach. Oh gosh, Nate," Monica sighed. He gave her a squeeze, then pulled back and looked at her. "I'm going to order you to do something for me." "Order you?" She shook her head, her shoulders slouched. "I want you to go to work. I want you to greet everyone like you always do with a smile and something cute to say. It's just another day brewing Millpond's best coffee. That's it. And I promise by the end of the day, I'll have news and you'll be feeling better." "How can you promise that?" "That's easy. You didn't do it." His words were so simple that they spread a smile across Monica's lips. How could she have missed that tiny fact? She didn't do anything to Tawny Clifford or anyone else in Millpond, so she had nothing to be afraid of, no one to rattle her cage. And if Jessica Lee Clifford called her one more time with threatening comments and vitriol in her voice, Monica was going to immediately stop being nice. After a few deep breaths, Monica wiped her eyes. "Do I look okay? Did my makeup run all over?" "No, you look fine. You look beautiful, like usual," Nate said, and smiled. Monica blushed, smiled, shook her head, and focused on her purse while collecting herself and the dueling emotions inside her.
On one hand, she wanted to swoon over Nate's comments. On the other hand, she wanted to rage over the fact that someone was framing her for such a horrible crime. "I've got to get to work. Thank you, Nate, for everything. I'll talk to you tonight," he replied. Monica drove to her spot on the main drag between the park bench and the statue of a lark almost directly in front of the Leach Memorial and parked her coffee truck. Taking Nate's words to heart, she did exactly as he instructed and threw herself into her work. The smell of coffee and cinnamon and sugar was like a soothing infusion. She saw her regulars. There was no scarlet S for suspect on her chest that would tip off everyone in town. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't muster up the chipper attitude Nate had encouraged her to put on display. When Marianne showed up with a plastic bag full of books, Monica almost burst into tears at the kind gesture, but she managed to hold it together. "You're looking much better. How are you feeling?" "I'm doing okay. I've got other things on my mind, that's all. Just a little distracted," she said, leaning closer to the order window. "What about, honey?" "Oh, it just seems like the ECC is always snaking into my business in one way or another," she smiled wanly.
"I don't see how they have the time to bother you with all that's going on," Marianne replied, before looking over her shoulder and leaning closer to the order window. With Tawny gone, there's a ripple among the current ECC members. Tanya's husband works at City Hall and had basically promised her that her niece, Alberta Holmes, who just moved to town, was going to be the new vice chair of the ECC. What is Tanya's last name? I don't think I've ever learned it, for all the aggravation she's caused me. And what does that even mean? Promised her niece. Who is Alberta Holmes? Why is this an issue? Monica asked politely, but was not in the mood to hear about the petty squabbles of Millpond's upper crust. She had enough problems of her own with the dead one. She didn't want to think about what the live ones were going to do next. It means that Tawny Clifford was the one who'd given her blessing to Alberta to step into that role without an election. That's against the rules, but money talks. Marianne winked before she continued. "I know from some of the paperwork that Ellen Lynn Conway had some stalled real estate deals that Alberta would be able to move along with her own poll. It's never about what you know, Monica. It's about who you know and the opportunities they offer." "Yeah," Monica nodded. "Do you know how much the real estate deals were for? I mean, Tawny is dead and, well," she shrugged. "Oh, I get what you're saying. Yes, I'd consider it a motive. Sometime we're going to have lunch together, and I'll really spill the tea. You can be my guest. It'll be my treat." Marianne smiled, making Monica feel a world better. "I'd like that." Marianne looked at her watch and, as usual, nearly jumped out of her skin at the time. On her way to being late again, she waved and hurried against the light to cross the street. Monica wondered about the information she'd just gotten. There had to be dozens of people embroiled in real estate deals gone wrong that ended up with cement shoes. Could a member of the ECC have been so desperate as to kill the deciding vote on a new member? This was Millpond, after all, not New York City, not Chicago, not a big city where real estate was worth billions. But these were women who waged a never-ending war against her for parking her truck in front of a monument that no one ever came to visit. At this point, there wasn't anything Monica would put past them, but she wasn't going to jump headfirst into this. It was too much to handle on her own. She needed Nate. When she finally saw him after chomping at the bit all day, he looked at her with a smirk, hooked his thumbs in the belt loops of his jeans, and put his weight on his right leg. Yes, there was some drama involving the ECC installing a ringer so Ellen Lynn Conway could get some projects underway. I was actually going to talk to her this evening. Can I come? The words just came out before Monica even knew she was thinking them. But once they were out, she was glad she'd said them. Her life and livelihood were on the line. There was no time to tiptoe around being coy. I was going to invite you, but there's just one condition. You have to promise to stay in the car. He shifted from his right leg to his left. I can do that. I can promise. She touched her jaw, which hadn't been bothering her, but which she prodded tenderly nonetheless.
She had every intention of staying in the squad car as Nate made his way to Ellen Lynn Conway's front door. It was supper time, and there were cars in the driveway. She heard Nate knock, but didn't dare move and peek out in that direction, just in case Ellen Lynn Conway caught a glimpse of her, which might cause problems for Nate's line of questioning. Instead, she just listened. The front door opened, and there was some conversation that Monica couldn't quite understand. But then the words "come in" reached her ears, just as she saw someone slip out the side door of Ellen Lynn Conway's house and quickly hurry down the sidewalk. It was mere seconds, and Monica had broken her promise to stay in the car.
Judging by how this person was speedwalking, Monica was sure it was a woman. She was wearing a baseball cap pulled down low, sweatpants, and a baggy flannel shirt. It was obvious to Monica that this was a disguise. No one in the Edgewater area dressed like this. This person didn't want to be recognized. Without hesitation, Monica followed, dodging from tree to tree, behind a parked car, and in the shadows of some shrubs before she crossed to the next street over and saw the person slip into a lovely but small Victorian-style home. Looking up and down the empty street while convincing herself that everyone was home having dinner, she dashed through the neighbor's yard and up to the Victorian house. The shadows of early evening gave her enough shade to slink along the side of the small home. There was a blue octagon sign near the front porch, boasting a security system, but Monica didn't see any cameras. Still, she tried to act casual. I should learn to carry a dog leash, she mused. That way she could blame it on an imaginary lost dog. No one would question that. But as it was, she was trespassing and attempting to peep in the windows. What was she looking for? Who was this person? Why did they sneak out of Ellen Lynn Conway's house when Nate was there? Did that person not want the police to know they were chatting and what they were chatting about? I just came from there, Monica heard a female voice coming from inside the house. A window was open just above her. She pressed her body against the siding and listened. Unfortunately, this woman was in the kitchen and quickly whipping something up. The conversation was not only one-sided, but chopped up by the sound of clinking dishes, clinging pans, and running water. But what Monica did hear chilled her to the bone. She said it's still on. The store should be mine, and there is no connection. It was an accident. The whole thing was an accident, the woman claimed. They need to buy me out if they aren't going to. More running water interrupted the dialogue. Monica's heart jumped. Could this be the person who slipped hydrocodone into Tawny's coffee? Her partner at the high-end boutique? If only Monica could get a look at the woman. She wondered if it was one of the members at the Uptown Tennis Club who had seen her and Carol there. The mole that leaked the information to Jessica Lee? Was this woman leading Jessica Lee in an attempt to throw the scent of her involvement on Monica? Why did this make the most sense out of such a crazy situation? What had Monica ever done to this woman or Tawny that made them choose her as the scapegoat? The police are at Ellen Lynn Conway's. I haven't spoken to anyone. I'm waiting until I get all my ducks in a row. I think it will blow over, and we won't have to. The sound of running water prevented Monica from hearing any more. How was she going to tell Nate about this? Was eavesdropping to collect information frowned on? Would he hurry over here to talk with this woman whom Monica didn't know based on what she was hearing underneath the kitchen window? All I know is she had some gross coffee, and the sink ran again. Gross coffee? Was this woman talking about Brown's Grounds? Gross coffee? How dare she? Monica knew she had the best coffee in town. Her sales were proving that. Gross coffee? Her jaw fell open as she was offended to her core. That was the precise moment a fly decided on a kamikaze mission directly into her mouth. A gasp, a choke, uncontrolled coughing before she gulped and held her breath. The conversation above her stopped. There was no clatter of dishes, no more running water. Monica pressed herself harder against the siding and held her breath. She couldn't be sure, but something in her gut told her to dive into the shrubs that divided the property she was trespassing on from the neighbors. 2 large steps were all it took to conceal herself in a thick patch of bushes. She crouched down and continued to hold her breath as the woman of the house ventured outside. She was shaped like a pear, still in her baggy sweatpants but missing the hoodie and baseball cap. Monica had never seen the woman at her coffee truck. She wore a good bit of makeup, the kind that highlighted cheekbones and narrowed a chubby chin. Her perfume preceded her and smelled nice but overwhelming. Monica tried to shrink herself even further as she pulled her shoulders in. Her thighs and knees were starting to ache. Her back was bent at an awkward angle. Her fingertips touched the dirt to keep her balance. She moved nothing but her eyes. The woman still had her phone in her hand. "No, I thought I heard something outside. I'm just taking a peek. Yes, you are probably right. I'm paranoid. But you can't be too careful in this town. It's filled with snakes." At that second, Monica felt a slight tickling on the back of her neck. Her t-shirt didn't offer her any kind of protection against the insect world. Something had landed on her and was crawling on her bare skin. It took a millisecond for her to imagine another fly, a bee, and then a spider. But not just any spider. It had to be something horrible, like a recluse that was crawling on her. Even though poisonous recluse spiders weren't normally found in shrubbery, that didn't stop her imagination from convincing her that's what was on her skin. The sweat sprang up under her arms and across her forehead. Whatever insect it was, the thing was slowly pricking her skin with its tiny needle-like legs, in no hurry as it tortured her and crawled down her back. But still, Monica remained like a statue. "It must have been a squirrel or something. I'm a mess. Tawny is causing me more grief being dead than she ever did alive. And she caused me plenty," the woman said as she turned and headed back to the front of the house. Once she was out of view, Monica freaked out. She launched herself off her haunches, her thighs and knees screaming with relief, as she bolted into the neighbor's yard, frantically wiping out her neck. The thought of tearing off her shirt did cross her mind, and had she felt anything else tickling down her spine, she just might have. But as it was, Nate was pulling the car slowly around the corner, obviously looking for her. She waved her arms, looking panicked as if her shirt was on fire. Before he could ask her anything, she slid into the passenger seat. "Is it on me?" "What?"
Get it off me! Get it off me! There's a spider on me! Get it off me! She shouted and turned her back to him, her arms waving and flapping like a hen that caught a glimpse of a fox. "Wait a second. I can't see anything," Nate replied. "It crawled down my shirt! It crawled down my shirt!" she panted. "Get it out!" She was in a full-blown panic. "Okay, just calm down, Monica. I'm going to lift your shirt. Just relax, take a deep breath." Monica held her breath, squeezed her eyes shut, and hoped the arachnid, now tripled in size by her adrenaline-fueled imagination, could be dealt with. When Nate said nothing, she feared it was so big he was struck dumb. That was when his arm stretched over her shoulder with his palm turned up. She squinted, then felt all the air rush out of her lungs. Walking peacefully across the middle of his palm was a ladybug. "Oh my gosh," she slouched and pulled the back of her shirt down. "Not a spider," he said and patted her back. "What were you doing that you had a ladybug climb aboard for a ride? Oh, and you broke your promise to stay in the car. Don't think I didn't notice." "I had a reason," she said as she scooted to face forward and relax against the back of the seat. Nate blew the ladybug out the window. Its little red wings extended and it lazily took to the air. "I can't wait for this," Nate said, putting the car in drive and slowly pulling away. Monica told him about the woman who slipped out of Ellen Lynn Conway's house via the side door. "I think she is Tawny's partner from the boutique. I thought if I could peek inside, I'd see something that might be helpful. Instead, I found myself under her kitchen window." She told him what she heard, and Nate listened intently. It was obvious from his expression that he wasn't all that happy someone had dodged him. Add to that the fact that it was someone he'd been trying to contact since Tawny's death had become so suspicious. "Then a fly flew in my mouth," she admitted, frowning with disgust and shaking her head, as she had to be hide. "Your private investigation techniques, although crude, never cease to amaze me. One of these days, you are going to find yourself in much more serious trouble than an imaginary spider crawling down your back," Nate scolded. "Yes, maybe so, but I did get you a good lead. Don't act like I didn't." She folded her arms across her chest and shivered as the last of the tickling sensation and the imaginary spider sensation left her body. She smiled at Nate, and he smirked back. His dark hair was tousled from a long day and had fallen over his forehead, making him look ruggedly handsome. Had she been able to read his mind, Monica would have realized he was thinking the same thing about her and how pretty she looked after her tussle with the shrubbery. "Yes, you did. There were rumors around town about Tawny selling the boutique, but as far as I knew, they were just rumors," Nate said as he focused on the road. "So what did you learn?" Monica asked. Well, I learned that Tanya from the ECC has her hands in some dealings that may or may not be completely legal, certainly heavy-handed, but whether she broke the law, I'm not sure yet. I scratched his head, then slid his hand down to scratch his jaw. What is her last name? Monica asked. Those ECC women are all over me all the time, and I don't even know their full names. I can't remember, but I'm thinking that there might be some shopping in your future. Why do you say that? Monica asked, self-consciously looking down and smoothing out her shirt and jeans.
It wasn't as if Monica had never worn a dress before. It was a common occurrence in her previous life to wear dresses on dates and to certain work functions. But being her own boss allowed a little more flexibility, like dressing casually, when the prospect of spilling sugar, cream, or coffee on herself was so high. Dressing up for work meant clean jeans and a t-shirt, at least at the beginning of the day. But today was different. She practically had herself in a hazmat suit serving coffee this morning. An apron she'd found in the basement of her house, which her grandfather probably never used, was perfect. Sure, it was a gloomy gray color, more suitable for a blacksmith than a barista, but it covered her dress entirely. She wore her gym shoes until it was time to implement the plan Nate had come up with. "Go to Tawny's boutique and see what you can find out," he said with a smile. "I'm not going to tell anything. They don't know me, and those who do know me that I'm the owner of the truck obstructing the Leach Memorial. I'll probably get thrown out of there, like in the movies, through the glass display window and everything," Monica huffed. "You won't. Just act like you're looking for a dress for the upcoming fundraiser," Nate said and adjusted his collar. "Oh, you mean the town fundraiser that I'm not invited to? That fundraiser? Oh, sure, I ought to pick out a beautiful dress for the event I won't be attending. Good idea, Nate. Thanks for reminding me I'm still a pariah in Millpond." She rolled her eyes as Nate chuckled. "Do you have any idea how funny you can be?" "Yes, it's a shame I'm not being funny now," she replied, pinching her lips together. Nate laughed out loud. Only Nate could manage to make Monica smile in the midst of being a person of interest in a murder investigation. So as she made her way to Tawny's boutique, she couldn't help but feel a little self-conscious. Was everyone staring at her? Did they know what she was up to? She adjusted her dainty purse strap over her shoulder and caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of a display window. Looking back at her was a very curvy, attractive young woman in a red dress and heels. There was nothing wrong. Her slip wasn't showing. There wasn't a coffee stain somewhere she hadn't noticed. For the first time in a long time, Monica saw that she was a real lady. The women of the Edgewater Community Council would have looked right at her and not known it was Monica Brown. At least, not at first. Then they would shrink with envy. At least that is what Monica was allowing herself to think. Even though her toes were being mercilessly pinched in the pointed toes of her shoes, especially her right one, she strutted with confidence and attitude right up to the entrance of her destination. Tawny Clifford's boutique was called Cliff's. Funny, Tawny Clifford didn't strike Monica as someone who would tolerate such a blue-collar-sounding nickname. She yanked the door open and stepped inside. There was an electric doorbell pinging softly, indicating someone had come in, but at the front counter there was already a small gathering of ladies. Behind the counter, the woman with the name tag looked up and gave Monica a huge, toothy smile. "Hello, welcome to Cliff's," she said, without making any effort to leave her post. "Thank you," Monica mouthed more than said out loud. She was instantly drawn to a lovely dress with huge, bold, pink flowers on it. It matched her truck perfectly. But while she looked at the dresses, she listened. "Isn't there a stipulation in your contract in case anything happens?" one woman who didn't totally grasp the concept of whispering asked the clerk. "I would have thought there was. It wasn't like she didn't know I wanted to eventually buy the place, but she was drunk so much of the time. What did a woman like her need to drown her sorrows for? She had more money than she knew what to do with."
the toothy clerk replied. Her voice had been quieter, but Monica managed to position herself close enough to hear. "Did she ever tell you there was a problem at home?" the patron asked. Monica looked her over quickly and surmised her shoes must have been pinching too. She kept sliding her left foot out of the heel, then back in. "Are you kidding? She only told me the problems she had with me. I can honestly say I don't know why I stayed. I really don't know now. Ever since I learned that Cliff's is going to Jessica, I'll guarantee it'll be closed in a month," the toothy sales clerk said. Monica got the feeling she was more than just a clerk. From the sound of things, she seemed to be a partner forced to be silent. "Speak of the devil," the woman in the pinchy heels said, before pretending to study the items behind the glass counter. "Hello, Jessica. I wasn't expecting you. Is there something I can help you with?" Monica froze. She had her back to the door, but everything inside her wanted to turn around and catch a glimpse of the woman who had been threatening her since this whole mess began. Did she know what Monica looked like? Or did she just know her phone number? She knew her address. Who else could have been skulking in her yard and then running away when Nate gave chase? Slowly, Monica shifted her body. In her mind, she'd built Jessica Lee into a powerhouse of a woman who could be one of those babes of the WWF, muscular and tan, with the best hair money could buy, and naturally beautiful cheekbones and big eyes. Careful not to attract any attention to herself, Monica peeked up and nearly laughed. There wasn't anything particularly funny about Jessica Lee, but Monica had made her into such a boogeyman that she almost didn't believe her own eyes. The waif in a sundress and sweater, with pale, freckled skin and bulging blue eyes that bored into the store clerk, reminded Monica of a newly hatched robin, certainly not the daughter of an affluent investor and politically connected mother, even if it was just on a local level. "I need access to the vault," is all Jessica Lee said. "It's on a timer, and that will be—" "I know it's on a timer. That's why I'm here now. It will be released in 5 minutes. Do you think you're the only one who knows that, Regina?" Monica let out a breath. It was comforting to know that Jessica Lee was rude to everyone. There was a good possibility she hadn't singled Monica out. Monica was just one of many on a list of people who could have wronged Tawny Clifford. "Of course not. Can I get you anything? A coffee? Maybe tea? Or are you trying to poison me too? Give me some kind of drug cocktail so you can get your hands on my mother's store? You'd like that, wouldn't you?" Jessica Lee said as if she was doing nothing more than commenting about the chance of rain. "Jessica Lee, I'm getting a little tired of the same line from you. You know where the vault is, and if you don't plan on buying me out, I still manage half this store. So get the documents you need to and go." Regina snapped. Monica held her breath and stood stone still. Only the sound of some lovely jazz being piped over the speakers indicated none of them were suddenly frozen in time. Jessica Lee didn't have a clever retort. It must have been the truth. Regina owned half the store. She and Tawny were partners. It was a fact that didn't sit well with Jessica Lee, which was obvious as she stomped off behind a boho curtain, flinging it aside like it too had offended her. Monica slowly inched her way to the corner of the store next to the dressing rooms. She really liked that flower dress and would have liked to try it on. But just as she thought she might, Jessica Lee came storming out of the office. "Where do you think you're going with that?" Regina shouted. Jessica Lee didn't reply, but practically ran for the door only to be cut off by Regina. "I've told you, Jessica Lee, you can't just come in here and take the money bags. I'm still running a business here. This money belongs to my mother. That money belongs to the store. Don't make me call the cops again, Jessica Lee. I'll do it, and your name will be all over the police blotter. Your dad won't be able to keep it out this time." Monica was struck dumb as she practically hid among the dangling purses and a mannequin. Part of her wanted to slip into a dressing room and peek out like she was in a horror movie, but another part of her insisted she was right where she belonged. Any sudden movement could get Jessica Lee to look in her direction, and who knew what kind of rage she could be sent into. "Just leave, Jessica Lee," Regina insisted. The other woman at the counter must have felt twice as awkward as Monica, having a real ringside seat. She could obviously hear the mumblings that Jessica Lee was saying. Monica held her breath, tilted her right ear in their direction, and strained to listen, but could only hear Jessica Lee murmuring. She took a slow, careful step out of her hiding place, only to land her heel at an angle, causing her ankle to buckle, making her lose her balance. A yelp escaped her lips as she flailed for a second before steadying herself on an elegant display that only showcased 6 silk blouses. All eyes were on her when she regained her composure. Jessica Lee seethed, not because she recognized Monica, but because she was embarrassed, angry, and desperate. She dropped the money bags on the floor and with a grunt of disgust left the shop. Monica looked at the other 2 women, but they weren't interested in her. Instead, Regina nearly vaulted across the counter and picked up the money bags. "You don't think she did anything in the office, do you?" the other woman asked. "I'll check." Regina replied, and with the money bags under her arm, walked quickly to the office behind the boho curtain. Monica hurried as best her aching feet could carry her out the door. She saw Jessica Lee walking away as if nothing had happened. Her head was high, her strides were calm, and she quickly climbed behind the wheel of a BMW. "Of course she drives a BMW, why wouldn't she?" Monica asked. The sky was getting cloudier by the minute. She couldn't remember if she'd heard any calls for rain, but Monica decided it was time to get back to her truck. By the time she'd walked the half-dozen city blocks, she was sure she'd permanently crippled herself. Once inside her coffee truck, she kicked off her shoes and slipped into the gym shoes she'd brought with her. Each toe relaxed in the cushy environment, and Monica instantly felt better. Now to tell Nate what she's seen and heard. What exactly did she see and hear? She asked herself as she opened her truck to the lunchtime rush. While doling out coffee and snacks and engaging in friendly banter with her customers, Monica realized all she had truly seen was a distraught daughter. Jessica Lee was obviously a little out of her gourd and knew she wouldn't be able to just walk out with bank deposits. Could she be a suspect? Possibly. She's the daughter of the victim. Jessica Lee had a troubled past. Perhaps her lashing out, blaming everyone, or trying to cause a stir was her way of dealing with the lost opportunities she had with her mom. Maybe that's it, Monica huffed as she closed the truck for the day. As she slid the window shut and went outside to collect her chalkboard of specials, looking silly in her gym shoes and nice dress, but feeling too comfortable to care, she made up her mind. Monica was not going to sneak around and peep in windows. She was going to go right up to Jessica Lee and talk to her. What's the worst that could happen?
Chapter 11. Monica didn't call Nate for Jessica Lee's address. Instead, she asked a more favorable source. With a bottle of wine in her hand, Monica parked her truck at home, locked it up, and walked across the street where the Hamilton brood could be heard, shuffling around, someone laughing, another shouting, pots and fans banging. With a quick knock on the door, Monica let herself in. Carol was at the stove stirring a big pot of something that smelled delicious, but Monica had her favorite, a bologna sandwich and potato chips waiting for her at home. It might not have been a gourmet meal to some, but to her, it was the perfect meal. She was saving it until she had finished her last errand for the night. "Hey girl, we're just getting ready to sit down for supper. Chuck, set another plate for Auntie Monica," Carol ordered. "Oh no, I can't stay. I've got an errand to run. That is, if you can help me," as a herd of children rushed her, all looking for hugs and kisses on the cheek. When she carefully set the bottle of wine down in front of Carol, she saw her friend's eyes twinkle with interest. "What's this? A subtle bribe? This ought to be good. Sissy, stir the pot while Mommy talks with Auntie Monica." She handed the spoon to her daughter, who dutifully resumed the stirring. "What is that you're making? It smells delicious," Monica asked as the ladies took a seat in the living room. "Rabbit stew. We told the kids Fluffy got recruited by the Easter Bunny and had to go off to basic training," Carol said without flinching. "Really? Hey, the little ones will learn soon enough where burgers and nuggets come from. We don't need to rush things. So, what's on your mind that requires sweetening the deal with some of my favorite white wine?" "Where does Jessica Lee Clifford live?" She's living at her parents' house for the time being. I'm assuming until the will gets read. Then she and her husband will go back to wherever it is they live. I think they're about 2 hours away. Or maybe I've got them confused with my cousin. Carol, why would you confuse Jessica Lee Clifford with your cousin? Because they are both spoiled brats who I hope never show up at my door. Carol shrugged as if her correlation between the two was completely normal and easy to follow. Who wouldn't have made that simple connection? Oh, okay, Monica blinked. Do you know Tawny's address? Of course I do. She gets a Christmas card from me every year. Seriously? Carol looked down her nose at her friend. No, she was not my kind of people, but I do know where she lives because I'm nosy like that. I knew you were. Monica smiled happily as her friend gave her the address and directions. What are you going to do? I'm just going to go and talk to her. Why would you do that? Carol asked and folded her arms across her chest. Save the wine and I'll tell you all about it. I have to get going before it gets too late, but I promise to fill you in on all the gory details, Monica said as she stood up and headed toward the door. You better. I'll be watching your house. If you don't come back tonight, I know where I'll tell Nate to start looking. Be careful. Those kinds of people are unpredictable, especially if you get near their money, Carol joked. Like a bulldog with a bone, careful you don't lose a finger. Monica decided that while she was out, she was going to cross a few to-dos off her list. She'd put air in her bicycle tires, she'd drop some mail at the post office, and she wouldn't be far from the house where Tawny Clifford and her husband lived. In her mind, Monica had envisioned a sprawling mansion with acreage perfectly manicured, lush green trees, full flower beds, not a single stray leaf on the lawn or a blade of grass out of place. In reality, the home was lovely, but smaller than she had expected. From the street, it looked like a grand painted lady, in shades of light blue, dark blue, and white. Up close, the place needed a paint job in some places, and a nest of birds had taken up residence in the circular attic window. Of course, Monica couldn't bring herself to evict an innocent bird while it was nesting, but as soon as the season was over and the babies left the nest, the snarl of sticks and twigs would be gone. Dirt and dried leaves had accumulated in the corners of the front porch. This was not the kind of house Monica had first imagined Tawny Clifford would live in, but as she recalled how the woman paid with exact change, never left a tip, and how her outfits matched down to her nail polish, perhaps this was exactly how her house would look, penny wise and pound foolish. Either way, the upkeep of her home in an affluent area of Millpond was not why she was there. She was facing her fear, Jessica Lee Clifford. As if pedaling up the long driveway of her very best friend for the millionth time with nothing strange about it, Monica held her head high as she scanned the area. No cameras, no hungry Dobermans about to come charging from behind the back of the house. She stopped her bike at the edge of the sidewalk, climbed off, and marched up the driveway, taking note of all the cosmetic flaws to quell the thoughts that were telling her to run away and never look back. Before she knew it, she was at the front door pressing the glowing orange doorbell button. Monica's heart was racing. Maybe no one would answer. She was secretly hoping. But just as she was about to turn on her heel, the door was yanked open. There was Jessica Lee Clifford. "Can I help you?" Jessica Lee Clifford? Jessica Lee Clifford Hayes, yes. Do I know you? Monica didn't know what to do. Jessica Lee had been calling her, threatening her, sneaking around her property. Yet Monica didn't even know what Jessica Lee looked like. Or was this some kind of ruse? "My name is Monica Brown," she replied and waited for Jessica Lee's reply. It took a few seconds. Monica could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. When the name registered, her eyes widened for a second before she cleared her throat. "Yes," she replied defiantly, folding her arms across her chest. Monica blinked, then shrugged her shoulder and held her hands palms up. "You've been calling me and threatening me and sneaking around my property. Look, I'm sorry your mom passed, but I had nothing to do with it, and—"
"How do you know my mother?" Jessica Lee snapped. Monica swallowed. "I served her coffee."
I am not responsible for any of her debts. You'll have to just write it off because I'm not paying you a nickel." Jessica Lee never unfolded her arms. Monica stood still for a second, like an angry hornet circling dangerously close. Should she remind Jessica Lee of her threats, or should she just say, "Oops," and hurry away? "You've been calling my house, blaming me for your mother's death." Jessica Lee's eyes filled with tears as she lifted her chin. "Miss Brown, I don't know who you are or what this is about, but I have enough on my plate. I don't have time for this sick game. If you don't get off my porch, I'll call the police." Monica took a deep breath, furrowed her eyebrows, lifted her left hand, and scratched her head. "Mrs. Clifford Hayes, I'm not trying to cause you any unnecessary problems, but someone claiming to be you is calling my house, making threats. You say it wasn't you?" asked Monica. "It wasn't me. I don't know who you are, and I doubt we'd have anything in common if I did, so I'm not sure what you want me to do about this problem you're having. I've got enough problems of my own right now." Jessica Lee looked at her watch. Monica didn't know where else to go. She'd have to tell Nate about this, but what was she going to tell him? She looked around and saw beyond Jessica Lee to the kitchen door. On the table was more than one bottle of wine and several dirty glasses. Monica wondered if the apple didn't fall too far from the tree after all. After a few awkward seconds, Monica took a deep breath, extended her hand to Jessica Lee, and gave her a weak smile. "Thank you for your time. I am truly sorry for your loss. Your mother seemed a pleasant woman." Looking at her hand like it was covered with slime and declining a shake, Jessica Lee scoffed. "That shows how much you know. My mother never thought of anyone but herself. The only thing she ever cared about was how she looked to everyone else. Picture perfect, and they all sucked up to her. Do you think anyone ever thought to be nice to me? Hardly. I can't even get my inheritance without jumping through a million hoops, all because of her." Jessica Lee flicked her hair behind her. Monica looked down and saw her feet were bare, perfectly pedicured. She pointed to the door, and without uttering another word, she stepped outside. The door slammed, making her jump and pull her shoulders up to her ears. As she walked to her bike, Monica wondered if she'd get any more calls from Jessica Lee. Maybe she was drunk dialing when she harassed Monica on the phone. Maybe she was calling all kinds of people. Who knows? The entire ECC might have been getting calls from her and hadn't said anything about it to anyone because they had their own skeletons they didn't want revealed. "But I don't have any skeletons. This makes no sense," Monica huffed. She kicked up the kickstand, hopped on her bike, and pedaled away from the Clifford estate and didn't look back. Fueled by anger and annoyance, she made it home in record time and decided to go to Carol's for some of that wine. Her friend would magically make some kind of sense out of this. She was sure of it.
"I can't make any sense out of this," after they'd each enjoyed a glass of wine and were casually sipping their second. "Me neither," Monica pouted. "From the looks of that house, Carol, I couldn't help but feel bad for her. It needed some serious tender loving care. The truth was, I think Jessica Lee needed some too, but she wasn't going to take any help from a pleb like me. She had that same attitude her mother did, above it all." "And you said there were wine bottles and glasses in the kitchen?" Carol asked, as she held up their empty wine bottle. "Yes, quite a few, but I didn't get the impression that Jessica Lee did much housework. That could have been her mother's. She's got a father, but he hasn't been around as far as I know. Nate said he was on a hunting trip with Jessica Lee's husband. What a couple of princes. One's wife is dead, the other's wife's mother is dead. Neither is around for support or to help, or even just to clean up the house a little," Carol said. "Maybe they're heartbroken," Monica asked, more than stated. "Yeah, right," Carol snorted. "What did Nate say about them?" "What makes you think Nate said anything to me about them?" Monica blushed. "Oh, that's right. Tani probably gabbed about their hunting trip to you while you two gals were out getting mani-pedis at the salon before a 3-martini lunch at Le Snoot restaurant. What was I thinking? Nate? Pfft."
Carol looked at Monica with a completely serious face, making her nearly spit out her wine. Okay, Nate did mention it to me, but that is because my name was on that paper in Tawny's hand. I'm a suspect. You aren't a suspect. Everyone knows you couldn't kill anyone. It would have had to be someone close to Tawny. Judging by her daughter's behavior, Tawny didn't let the riffraff too close. It had to be someone she knew for a long time. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I doubt it was Logan Farmer, Carol nodded. Logan, God's gift to women? Don't let him hear you say that. I think he'd love the attention. And don't kid yourself, there are women who would find out he's a suspected murderer, and his stock would go through the roof. He'd have women crawling all over him, Monica replied with an eye roll. But I do agree with you. He might be a gigolo, but that's the extent of it. There isn't too much depth to him. No, besides, what would he gain? He's certainly not in her will. Could you imagine that? Carol held up her hands like she was reading an invisible scroll. And I, Tawny Clifford, bequeath my boy toy Logan Farmer my designer sheets and disco ball, also my unused tennis racket and can of balls. Monica laughed so hard her stomach hurt. When she finally regained her composure and wiped her eyes that had sprung leaks due to their fit of giggles, she cleared her throat. Maybe the husband and son-in-law made sure they were out of town when this happened. Now those two would definitely have a motive. But it was Mr. Clifford who made all the money. It isn't like he had to off Tawny to get his hands on it. No, but if he had a mistress and wanted a divorce, well, we've seen enough true crime shows to know that some people don't want to split a dollar, let alone millions with an ex-spouse. If Tawny was cheating and everyone knew it at the tennis club, I have the feeling Mr. Clifford was too, and everyone probably knew it as well. Rich people live differently than you and me, Carol replied as she finished her glass of wine. Just then, someone rang the doorbell to the Hamilton house. Monica finished her glass of wine too, just as she and Carol watched Dud answer the door. Hey Nate, what can I do you for? He boomed in that voice men use when they are happy another man shows up to relieve him of being the only rooster in a gossipy henhouse. Did he say Nate? Monica whispered. He sure did, Carol smiled widely and winked at Monica as she stood from the couch they were sharing. Monica felt a rush of heat over her body. It was just the wine, she told herself, and not the idea of Nate searching her out. Had he searched her out, or did he have something to talk to Dud about? Is Monica Brown here? I saw her bike in the driveway and just assumed, Nate asked. She is. She and my wife are getting drunk in the family room, Dud teased. No one is drunk, Carol huffed. Nice to see you, Sheriff. What's shaken? She slinked up to her husband and gave him a tender squeeze. How long has Monica been here? Nate asked, just as Monica appeared from the family room. She could tell by the look on his face that she was about to get more bad news. What is it? She asked. Nate cleared his throat. Jessica Lee Clifford is in the hospital. Someone attacked her in her home. Monica put her hands on her hips, looked down at her fate, and shook her head. She didn't say anything, but she wanted to puke. Oh my gosh, Carol said, putting her hand to her throat, before walking over to Monica and slipping her other hand around her arm. Monica felt a rush of heat over her body. It was just the wine, she told herself, and not the idea of Nate searching her out. Had he searched her out, or did he have something to talk to Dud about? I have to ask you, Monica, you didn't hurt her or touch her in any way? You didn't go to her house with the intention of… Nate grimaced as if the words were bitter in his mouth. I didn't do this. I'd never hurt anyone like this. Oh my gosh, how bad is she? Monica's stomach folded over on itself. She's got a concussion, a black eye, and quite a few scrapes and bruises. Makes your bruises nothing more than a shadow, Nate said. Monica's stomach sank. I do want to come with me and tell me what happened when you went to Jessica Lee's house.
Monica patted Carol's arm as she nodded and stepped toward the door. You're not going to cuff her and take her to the station, are you? Because if you are, I'll get her a lawyer first, Carol asked, displaying the mama bear coming out of her. No, I just want to talk to her, Nate said, looking at Monica as if his heart was breaking. It's okay, Carol, but keep that ambulance chaser's number close by just in case. Monica smirked, then stepped out on the porch and strolled toward her bike as Nate followed. "Want to go to my place and talk?" she said, suddenly feeling tired and annoyed. All Nate had to do was look at her, and it was obvious she didn't fight anyone. As if reading her mind, he shined his flashlight on her arms and hands. She held them out for him to see. "It's just routine, Monica. I can't let anything slide or else it would look like you were covering a crime. I know," she said sadly. She held out her hands. They were small and soft for the most part. Her nails were short and filed neatly. A little clear polish made them shiny. There was no sign of bruised, swollen knuckles, no scratches or scrapes from hitting someone. She looked completely lovely. "What made you go to Jessica Lee's house, Monica? She's been threatening you, and you decide it's a good idea to go pay her a visit? What were you thinking?" Nate's voice was soft as she walked with her bike between them, from the Hamilton yard to her front stoop. "I went to the boutique, like you had hinted at," she said, as she took a seat on her front porch step. She looked at him, and he nodded, but acknowledging his part in instigating a confrontation with a murder victim's family was of no comfort. She told Nate what she saw and how Jessica Lee had acted. "I felt kind of bad for her, Nate, but at the same time, I wanted to know why this skinny little girl was threatening me. So when I went over to her house, I had no intention of causing a scene or threatening her. I wanted her to see me as a person, not as a suspicious name on a piece of paper in her mother's dead hand." Nate had taken a seat next to Monica, his pad of paper out and his knee touching hers. "All right, start from the beginning," Nate said softly. "Tell me everything. You said, she said, what you saw, anything that caught your eye." "Oh, and is this what you wore to her house?" "Yeah. Once I was done, I went right to Carol's." Nate pinched his eyebrows together as he scribbled some notes. "Why?" "Jessica Lee said you were wearing a navy blue hoodie." "I don't own a navy blue hoodie. The only hoodies I own have Brown's gowns on them. I can't imagine it being a good business model to wear my business gear to a beatdown," Monica scoffed. "No, that wouldn't be good for business at all." Jessica Lee also said she was jumped from behind. She was clunked on the back of the head, beaten up, then saw her assailant run away. Her description was vague because she said she couldn't really focus. She obviously didn't get a good look at her face due to the hoodie, I'm assuming. Nate shook his head as he wrote. "Well, you can tell her it wasn't me. I didn't do it," Monica huffed. "She thinks it's you because you were at her house." "The mailman was at her house today. Is he a suspect? Come on, Nate." "Then someone wants it to look like you did it," Nate replied, making Monica snap her head up and her eyes squint. She hadn't wanted to think about this, but it was true. Someone in Millpond was trying to frame her for attacking Jessica Lee and for killing Tawny. Who? Who could possibly be behind all this? I might have some people who don't like me, but I can't think of one who would go through this kind of trouble to frame me. It doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense to a rational thinking person. It makes perfect sense to a sociopath. The problem with that is those kinds of people blend into society seamlessly. That's what makes them so dangerous. Okay, Nate stood up. Now the idea of being alone sent chills up Monica's spine. "Where are you going?" "I've got a little digging to do." "Can I come with?" Nate looked at her and blinked. For a second, I could tell he was considering it. "I don't think so. This might compromise an already delicate situation. We can't risk anyone seeing our talks or walks together as a cover-up." "Yeah, I suppose you're right," Monica replied as she rubbed her shoulders and looked at her front door. "Would you like me to search your house before I go?" Monica thought for a second before she shook her head no. "I'll be fine." "Okay, I'll have a squad car drive by to keep an eye on you if you like." "It's okay, Nate. I know your number if I need it." 911, she smirked. As Nate walked back to his car at the end of Carol's driveway, Monica wished she hadn't tried to be so tough and let him search her dark house before he left. But she didn't. She pulled out her keys from her pocket, unlocked her deadbolt, and quickly snapped on the light. Everything looked normal. She held her breath. Everything was quiet. No one setting off the creaky boards in the hallway upstairs. No one straining the hinges by pulling a closet door shut somewhere in the house.
It was her house, empty and safe. The backyard, however, was a different story.
With all the excitement of meeting Jessica Lee and being accused of putting her in the hospital, Monica found that her mind and body were ready and willing to go to bed early. She made herself a bologna sandwich with dill pickles and chips and sat cross-legged on her couch with the television on. She found some brain-dead sitcom, as most of them were, and guiltily enjoyed the canned laughter, talentless actors, and even the commercials. "Why are you so calm tonight? You should be climbing the walls and biting your nails and freaking out," she muttered to the television. Something inside her told her that there was nothing to worry about. She didn't do anything. The whole situation, Tawny's murder, Jessica Lee's attack, was almost becoming comical. Not that it was funny that someone died, but there was an element of humor bubbling to the surface that made Monica relax. It was beyond ludicrous that she'd poisoned Tawny with her wisdom teeth painkillers. It was even more ridiculous that she'd beat up her daughter. So, since she didn't do any of these deeds, there was nothing to worry about. Do you know how many people per year are wrongfully prosecuted and found guilty of crimes they didn't commit? Tons, her conscience hissed. You've already got the Edgewater Community Council against you. Do you really think those women don't already have an orange suit picked out in your size? Monica pinched her lips and shook her head. It was no use. She had a busy day and was tired. There was nothing that little voice could say that could keep her from her soft, warm bed. Perhaps the wine she had with Carol also helped. "Whatever works," she said as she snapped off the television after a couple of episodes of some show about roommates, escapades, and silly love interests. "Sort of like yours and Nate's," she muttered to her reflection over the bathroom sink as she brushed her teeth. It was true. She and Nate had been playing this game since she arrived in Millpond. He knew she liked him. He had to. She didn't crack wise and shower him with sarcasm because she didn't like him. "I'm not thinking about this now, but when my name is cleared and I am a respectable member of the Millpond community, I'm going to make a bold move. Yes, I am. Nate won't know what hit him," she huffed. The wine definitely had something to do with her newfound courage. Slipping into baggy flannel shorts and an oversized t-shirt, Monica let out a deep breath as she shuffled to her bedroom, pulled back the covers, and climbed into bed. Her head hit the pillow. The smell of her fabric refresher filled her nose with a soft lavender scent, and the sheets were cool against her feet. Once the lights were out and the familiar shadows of her bedroom appeared, Monica listened for a second. There was nothing in her house but her. She started to think of some of the improvements to the house she had on her wish list. A few more months and she'd be able to have one of the bathrooms redone, a shower where the tub was, a new sink. The color would be pink, not the olive green it was now. Yes, pink was very girly, but it was her house now, and had been for a while. A pink bathroom would be cute. As her body became heavier and her mind drifted on, Monica thought about her grandfather and all the things she'd left behind for her. Old books, family photos, crazy knickknacks that were as tacky as the olive green color of the bathroom. She loved them all. Sadly, since she got here, there wasn't the luxury of sifting through it all to put everything in its proper place. Work, work, work. That's what she'd been doing. Now she was a suspect in the murder of a Millpond Salicite who was having an affair with a tennis coach who was also as tacky as the knickknacks and color of the bathroom. Monica rolled her eyes at the thought of Logan Farmer. She rolled over on her side, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes. Sleep came. When Monica's eyes popped open, it was still dark. Her alarm hadn't gone off. She looked at the clock. Still 3 hours to sleep, but nature called. She rolled onto her back. After rubbing her face, she sat up, swung her legs over the side of the bed, and padded to the bathroom. The hardwood floor was cold beneath her feet. There was a little bit of a chill that made sleeping so easy underneath the cozy blankets on her bed. Monica kept the windows open a crack in her bedroom and in the kitchen where a cross breeze was inevitable. The air was cool and heavy with moisture. Monica finished in the bathroom, snapped off the light, and took one silent step into the hallway when she heard something. Suddenly, her eyes popped wide. She held her breath.
Straining hard to listen, she could hear through the cracked kitchen window. Someone was in her backyard. Her breath froze in her chest as she pivoted on her feet and with one giant step pressed her back against the wall in the hallway between the kitchen and the bedroom. This is your house. You know all the doors are locked, and anyone trying to get in will have to break one door down while you slip out the other. You know where all the knives are. There is a baseball bat in the basement. Her thoughts raced. For a second, she listened and thought maybe her imagination had gotten the best of her. Maybe it was just a rabbit eating her seedling Brussels sprouts in the garden, or a raccoon looking for something that spilled out of the garbage can. She squinted toward the window. The figure was right there, slowly inching his way closer to the back porch. Monica had a clear view, not exactly the svelte figure of a cat burglar or even a neighborhood thug breaking into a house at random. This person might have a bit of trouble if they tried to run. A strange figure, big in the shoulders and chest, but skinny legs, wearing a hoodie. It had to be a perfectly clear night as Monica could see the silhouette tiptoeing like a cartoon rabbit, with his hands raised and his knees coming up high with each step. Confident she could not be seen in the darkness of the house, Monica carefully stepped out of her hiding place and went to the back door. Silently, she felt the doorknob. The button in the center was vertical, locked. The deadbolt was horizontal, locked. She let her breath out slowly. The only vulnerable point was the window, but Monica watched outside, ready to spring into action should the intruder try and enter her home.
After a few more steps, the person stopped. They were at the base of the porch, not coming up. Fumbling around in their hoodie, the person was searching for something. Monica couldn't see what it was in the darkness, but whatever it was, they pulled it from a plastic bag and tossed it onto the porch. It clanked like a coin or piece of jewelry. Monica squinted. If they'd just take the hood down for a second, she was close enough to see who it was. Why wait for them to do something? This is your house. You take the bull by the horns and show him who's boss, her conscience roared. Monica took a deep breath. In a matter of seconds, she stuffed her fear down to her toes while pulling up as much courage as she could muster from everywhere else in her body. Slowly, she moved her hand toward the deadbolt. Even though she couldn't see it clearly, she knew it was trembling. Blood was pounding in her ears as her heart pumped wildly. In one swift move, she slapped the wall. The brightness of the back porch light flooded the yard. "What are you doing in my yard?" Monica shouted through the door. The intruder had been so scared they stumbled back, lost their balance, and fell awkwardly into the grass. Monica stared and tried to get a glimpse of who, something, anything that would give away who was underneath the hoodie. It was dark blue, like the person Jessica Lee said that attacked her. The only thing Monica could see was a few wild strands of long blonde hair that had slipped loose around the edge of the hood, but it was tied tight. The person was wearing gloves and boots, and before Monica gathered enough courage to open the door, they'd collected themselves enough to get back on their feet and hobble clumsily toward the vulnerable spot in her chain-linked fence, like Quasimodo lagging through the halls of Notre Dame. The bravery overflowed, and Monica quickly snapped the lock open, yanked the door, and took off into her yard. The cold, damp air enveloped her. She hadn't realized the sweat she had broken into in the warm house, but now the chilly air seeped into her big t-shirt, under her arms and down the middle of her back, making her shiver. Her feet were bare too. The wet grass and dirt made her cringe. Although she loved to work in her garden, she didn't like the feeling of wet grass between her toes. This was too much. She couldn't pursue. She stopped and listened, and again, like last time, heard a car door slam and wheels screech off down the road. Monica stood there, panting, like she'd just run a marathon. Her body trembled with adrenaline, and her hair stuck to her forehead. As she stood there in her dewy yard with the wet grass tickling at her ankles, she decided she wasn't scared anymore. She was angry. "This is too much. I've had it," she muttered. Off in the distance, a dog barked a couple of times. A truck could be heard rumbling its way down an empty street. Monica turned and, on the balls of her feet, went back to her porch.
What did you drop? What did you throw on my porch with your dirty, filthy, lying hands that you think is going to—" Monica stopped. In the corner by the door, next to an empty terracotta flower pot that Monica hadn't decided what to put in yet, there was a twinkle that caught her eye. She stooped down and inspected the item before touching it. It was an exquisite ruby ring, gold with a small row of what Monica could only assume were diamonds, and another of beautifully milky red rubies. Not costume jewelry, the real thing. What in the world is this? Why would a criminal who killed someone and then beat up someone show up at her place, not to lay a finger on her, but instead to toss a piece of jewelry on her back porch and run away? Why would that happen? What was the thinking process of this jerk that kept slipping through the cracks of law enforcement and eluding Monica? There was no going back to bed now. Monica went back inside her house and turned on her coffee pot. She took a seat at her kitchen table that looked out on the front yard, and by the soft glow of the light over the stove that was always on, she studied the ring. This couldn't be just some ring. There was a significance to it that Monica didn't know yet, but there'd be an easy enough way to find out. Tomorrow, actually today, at work, she'd find out its significance.
Chapter 14. Carol looked at Monica without the slightest emotion as she tugged the belt of her robe. "I don't like it, Monica. I don't like this at all." "Carol, you're the only person I can trust right now, so if something happens to me, you know to give this letter to Nate. Don't open it. The less you know, the better." "I already know too much. How am I supposed to go about my day knowing you're dangling yourself like a pork chop over a pit bull? Don't you think that is a little dramatic? No, you're talking about a person who killed one woman and beat up another. They've obviously got you in their sights. Monica, I'm being completely serious. What if they try and kill you?" Carol's eyes were wide with worry, and her forehead was a maze of worry lines. "If they wanted to kill me, they would have tried last night when I was alone, or any time I was by myself. I told you whoever it was flopped over and took a tumble when I shouted through the door. Then they limped off hurt. I didn't lay a finger on them, and I hurt them, see?" "I see they were on your porch and ready to do something," Carol snapped back. "Nope, this person doesn't want to get their hands dirty. They're up to something. I'm hoping my plan will throw them off enough to make a mistake." "Okay, but don't be surprised if I see you peeking around corners and light poles keeping an eye on you," Carol huffed. Monica smiled as she handed Carol the envelope with the letter written especially for Nate, should her plan backfire. As she crossed the street, there was a hum inside her chest that started very small, but grew as she drove to her designated spot on Main Street between the park bench and Brass Lark. She was nervous, anxious, and frustrated, all wrapped up. As she brewed her coffee and prepared the truck for opening, she wondered if she was doing the right thing. It wasn't the greatest plan. Perhaps it wouldn't produce anything. What's to say her nighttime visitor wouldn't even show up today? Maybe they'd come tomorrow, or the next day, or never. No, something in my gut tells me something is going to happen today. That was just too weird. A cat burglar placing something valuable at my house instead of stealing something? That's crazy. There must be a reason. Monica muttered as she grabbed her chalkboard of specials and carried it outside to the front of the truck. When she finally opened her big window for business, there was a small line of regulars waiting. She greeted them as she always did and watched their expressions as she did so, making sure everyone noticed her right hand, where the elegant, sparkling ruby ring snugly hugged her index finger. It was hard to miss, as its size and design were not only unique, but large. Some people looked at it and just went about their way. Others didn't seem to notice it at all, but Monica was keeping an eye out for a specific person of a specific shape who may or may not have a limp, whom she was determined to flash this ring at.
It wasn't a gift, but an offering of some kind. Whoever threw this on her porch wasn't expecting her to find it. It was being planted. Just then, Monica had another thought. What if things were planted all over her property? Why didn't she think of that? Maybe something else was stashed on her porch, somewhere on her property, or even on her truck. Without waiting, she called Nate. It went straight to voicemail. The chances of seeing him this morning were pretty good, but she didn't want to wait, especially since she'd planned for the worst-case scenario already, that she'd be attacked or kidnapped. Or killed, her mind whispered, but she pushed that aside. When she finally heard the beep, she quickly spilled the beans to Nate's voicemail. In a hushed voice, she gave a quick rundown of her prowler from this morning. But if they were planting something, Nate, there might be more around the property that I don't know about. Someone could have been stashing stuff for days, and I'd never know. So maybe you could swing by and take a look around for anything odd in my yard. When she hung up, she realized how corny and crazy her idea sounded. Maybe this was what the culprit was hoping for, that she'd just go crazy and second-guess herself. Did she black out and absent-mindedly put her pills in Tawny's coffee? Did she beat up Jessica Lee and her mind didn't remember? Did she rob someone of a ring and imagine that a dark, lumbering form tossed it on her property? As far as I know, there was no history of mental breakdowns in my family, but there could have been some recessive gene, or maybe there was just a first time for everything. No, Monica, pull yourself together. You aren't going crazy. Someone is trying to frame you, and this ring has something to do with it, she hissed, nearly ready to slap herself in the face to get her thoughts straight. Suddenly, she didn't want it on her finger anymore. It was bad mojo, she knew it. It was making her crazy. Maybe it's cursed, she muttered with a bitter chuckle, as she tried to pull it off her finger. It wouldn't budge. Ah, great. She tugged again. Nothing. "What's the matter?" came a familiar voice from the window. Monica looked up and saw Marianne peeking in. "Oh, you wouldn't believe it if I told you," Monica muttered. She reached for a large paper cup. "The usual." Marianne didn't answer. Instead, she stared at the ring on Monica's index finger. All the color drained from her face. Monica's heart jumped. Then she remembered the strands of blonde hair snaking out from the hoodie, the trespasser's awkward shape and clumsy getaway. Her mouth dried, and swallowing hurt. Yes, the usual," Marianne stuttered, then forced a smile as she looked at her watch. Suddenly, Marianne seemed less chatty, but her eyes followed the ring like she was watching a wasp fly dangerously close to her. "So, what's new at City Hall?" Monica prodded. "Nothing. Have you heard anything more about Tawny Clifford's case?" At the mention of Tawny, Marianne's eyes snapped and locked with Monica's. There was a shadow behind them, like she was hiding something. Monica's hands began to tremble. What was wrong with Marianne, and why was she looking at Monica as if she'd kicked a puppy? Why would I know anything about that? It was as if a completely different person slipped into Marianne's body and took over.
Because you work there and seem to have your finger on the pulse? Marianne coughed and shook her head. I don't know what you were talking about. I'm sorry, Marianne. I just thought, can I have my coffee, please? Monica had hoped that wearing the ring might bring something or someone to the surface, but she never expected practically an allergic reaction from anyone, let alone one of her favorite customers who had been feeding her information on the ECC ladies since she moved there. Now it was Monica's turn to cough. Had it been one long elaborate plan? She handed Marianne her coffee. "Keep the change," was all Marianne said as she threw a 5 on the counter and quickly limped away. Limped? With all of her usual bags and totes, she limped to the crosswalk? "What happened to your leg? Why are you limping?" Monica called just as another customer approached the window. Marianne only turned her head slightly but didn't answer. She had to have heard her. It wasn't so noisy on the street that she couldn't hear her. "Oh my gosh," Monica huffed.
Could it be that someone she considered a friend, if nothing else a decent, steady customer who was pleasant to talk to, gave her books to read, had something to do with this scheme the whole time? Monica didn't know what to do, so she focused on her work, took a few deep breaths, and decided to calm herself. There was nothing she could do now. Plus, odd behavior and a limp were hardly something the law could convict someone on. She had to get better proof than this. As she served her customers, familiar ones and strangers, her mind kept running over the facts, and each time she did, something new made her heart jump. It's got to be a coincidence. I don't usually believe in coincidences, and this is a pretty big one, but that's all it can be. It's just a weird string of events that happen to coincide, but don't have anything to do with each other. It's got to be, Monica said with her hands on her hips, looking down at her shoes. However, she didn't believe it. No matter how she tried to twist it, the fact remained that this morning, Marianne had all the criteria of the person who was at her house last night. As if in a trance, she filled a couple of coffee orders, her hands moving automatically. She knew the inside of her truck as she knew the back of her own hand. It didn't take long for her to start questioning if she even saw what she saw. Looking down, she decided no matter what, she wanted that ring off her finger. She ran her hand under some ice-cold water, hoping to shrink it just enough to slide it off. After a few painful twists and turns, she was free of the pretty gold band. She placed it carefully in her wallet in her purse and was about to start a fresh pot of coffee when she was interrupted. If there was one thing that would get Monica Brown's blood boiling, it was a rude customer who slapped her order window. Slowly, she strolled up from the back of her truck with attitude in her voice and in her hands. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyebrows pulled together, chest out, and hands on her hips. Standing there was a man Monica had never seen before. He was wearing a polo shirt and khakis, and a serious scowl on his face. "Where is it?" he shouted. "Where is what?" Monica snapped back with equal attitude. "Where is Tawny Clifford's ring?" Suddenly, Monica remembered. Tawny Clifford had been wearing this ring the day she had a fit about there not being any whipped cream for her drink. She wanted a discount for it. She fished around in her change purse, flashing this big thing while giving attitude over paying a total of $5.80 for the drink. She could have bought herself 1,000 tubs of whipped cream for the cost of that ring. This certainly wasn't the lead Monica had expected, but it was a lead. Someone had tipped off an associate of the murder victim. Who this rude man was and what his stake in all of this was, Monica didn't know, but she wasn't about to hand over a piece of fine jewelry to a dude she didn't know, no matter how much he tried to puff himself up. First, no one orders me around in my place of business. Second, I don't know who you are or what you are talking about, so unless you're ordering coffee, I suggest you take your attitude elsewhere," Monica said, surprising herself with how calm she sounded, considering her insides were vibrating like new woofers in the back of a car. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You thought you could wear her ring and no one would notice? What were you going to do, wear it to the nearest pawn shop and get a few measly dollars for it? Is that it?" the man hissed. Just as Monica was about to shut the window on him, she saw an all-too-familiar face shuffle up the sidewalk in a hurry. It was Tanya What's-Her-Name from the Edgewater Community Council. "Honey, let the law handle it," she said as she slipped her arm in the crook of her husband's elbow, looking embarrassed while she tried looking everywhere and anywhere but Monica. "I should have known," Monica huffed. "You guys are that desperate to get me off this block that you'd kill someone?" Now, Monica knew full well that the chances of ladies of the ECC being killers were slim to none, but she was done playing nice. "I didn't say you killed anyone," Mr. What's-His-Name barked. "You're not squeaking by with a loophole in semantics, pal," Monica huffed. "I know exactly what you're up to. Your wife has having some problems with Ellen Lynn and some woman named Alberta. Isn't that right, Tanya? If anyone had a reason to teach Tanya a lesson, perhaps it was you guys." Monica smirked. "Having some real estate issues? Someone stepping into the ECC without using proper channels? That's what I heard. See, you're not the only ones who know people in Millpond."
"How dare you? Tanya was one of my very best friends," Tanya huffed. "That's why you let her drink so much, especially when she was writing checks," Monica said. She really had no idea if the rumors about Tanya's drinking were real or not, but the expression on Tanya's face was enough to confirm they were at least partly true. "Look, we just want the ring you stole. It belongs to her daughter now," Mr. What's-his-name said, suddenly appearing rational and calm. "If you just give it back, we won't press any charges. You have my word." "I don't know who you are," Monica glared.
"I'm Richard Smith. I believe you know my wife from the Edgewater Community Council," he said, raising his chin as if they were some kind of Millpond nobility. Monica pinched her eyebrows together. Smith? Did she really not know their last name, one of the most common in the entire country? She pinched her lips together and blinked, more to herself than the dynamic duo standing in front of her. Tanya watched Monica's expression but said nothing. It was one of the few times Monica witnessed her not flapping her gums. "You think I have a ring that belonged to Tawny Clifford? Where did you get that idea?" Monica asked, hoping the calm in her voice would make them slip and just spill the beans. It didn't work. Mr. Smith pressed his lips together and lifted his chin. "I guess you leave us no choice but to go to the authorities." "Why don't you do that? Tell them who told you I had Tawny's ring and let them go question that person first." After letting out a deep sigh, Mr. Smith and Tanya turned on their heels and hurried across the street before the light changed. Monica was shaking, she was so mad. Unfortunately, she was scared as well. That was a worse feeling. There was only one way they could have known about the ring, and that was from the culprit who dropped it on the porch. Mary Ann had access to both Mr. and Mrs. Smith. She had a limp. She reacted to Monica wearing the ring. Why did she even approach the truck and order coffee? Wouldn't it have been smarter for her to not get coffee today? Fumbling with her cell phone, Monica dialed Nate's number. It went to voicemail, so she left a message and promised to stay put until he met her at the truck. But that turned out to be easier said than done. There were just enough people coming to the truck for Monica to stay mostly busy, but her mind kept drifting to Mary Ann spying the ruby ring on her finger, and then Dick and Tanya Smith showing up to demand Monica do as they say, not even asking how she came into possession of the ring, but instead just assuming she stole it. Part of her wanted to track them down, maybe go to City Hall and confront Richard Smith and Tanya in front of everyone. After all, they saw nothing wrong with coming to her place of business, disrupting her flow, and accusing her of stealing. Who does that? Monica took a seat on the metal bar stool that she had in the back of her truck for minutes like this, where she could sit and give her feet a rest. But she was anything but tired. The adrenaline was like a slow drip IV. Just when she thought she was calming down, her heart jumped at a new thought and she was annoyed all over again. There was no use staying open when her mind was so frazzled. She had to do something, and maybe confronting the Smiths wasn't the answer at all. She had a better idea. But she couldn't tell Nate where she was going. He'd never allow it. I could hear him telling her it was not a good idea, and that she would just be making her situation worse. But how much worse than being accused of murder, theft, and assault could there be? Monica put the "Sorry, we're closed" sign on the window and quickly locked up the back of her truck. As much as she hated to do it, she left all of her equipment as it was and vowed to clean it all when she got home. Now she was going to drive to the hospital and see Jessica Lee. The girl knew full well that Monica hadn't laid a finger on her, but she knew something. She was sure of that. After pulling her truck into a parking spot at the back of the hospital parking lot, she hurried to the information desk. The older man and woman working there were pleasant enough, as they easily looked up Jessica Lee's name, handed her a visitor's badge and the room number. Thankfully, Jessica Lee was not still in the emergency room.
Stopping at the overpriced gift shop, she picked up a small teddy bear. Something in her gut said showing up empty-handed at someone's hospital bed was rude. Besides, someone did beat Jessica Lee up. It just wasn't Monica. So after dropping $20 for something she could have picked up at a dollar store, Monica got onto the elevator, and after a swoosh, a ping, and the flip of her stomach, she was on the 8th floor. Unlike all the movies and television shows, this particular floor was not a bustling beehive of activity. She approached the nurse's station, asked where to find Jessica Lee's room, and was immediately directed to her right with a smile and a welcome. There was a chair outside the room, but it was empty. After a few deep breaths, Monica walked down the corridor and straight into the room. The television was playing softly on some game show where people guessed the prices of groceries for the chance to win something stupid like a trip to Caledonia, wherever that was. Jessica Lee was in bed with her eyes closed, but her features weren't relaxed, not like someone oblivious to another person entering the room. Monica was sure she was faking. She had expected to see her swollen, bruised, and scabbed all over, but aside from a shiner and some bruises on her arms, Monica thought this attack was pretty lame. Not that it made it any better, it didn't, but it could have been worse. Monica cleared her throat. Jessica Lee opened her eyes and stared at her visitor. The look on her face registered that she was busted. "I came to admire my handiwork," she said without flinching. "So this is what I supposedly did to you. Well, if that's how I jump someone, I'm pretty lame." She stepped up to the bed and handed the teddy bear to Jessica Lee, who took it without smiling. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said, and tried to scoot up on her pillow. "I bet. So do you want to tell me why you told the police that I beat you up?" Monica sat on the edge of the bed and crossed her arms. "You don't know why I said it. You were the last person to come to my house. Maybe you were stuck in my subconscious or something." "Who did this to you?" Monica asked. "You've got to tell the police it wasn't me." "I said I wasn't going to press charges," she said, as if that made the situation go away. Monica's mouth fell open. Had she really heard her right? "Jessica Lee, you've got to tell the truth. Whoever did this to you has to pay the price. No one should put their hands on another person. Heck, girl, we learned that in kindergarten. Look, I'm friends with the sheriff and he'll help you. He's a really good man, and—" "I can't," she muttered. "Look, I understand you might be scared, but you can't lie about me, and I'm not pressing charges. The whole incident will just go away," she huffed, her eyes welling with tears, and her already sad and tired expression became even more pitiful as her nose and eyes reddened. Monica felt a tug in her heart. She felt terrible for Jessica Lee. Her mother was dead. Neither her father nor her husband had shown up for any of the drama unfolding. The woman was all alone, in more ways than one. "Whoever did this to you needs to be locked up. Otherwise, he's going to do it again, and it might be worse." "I did it," she said, before squeezing her eyes shut, forcing a trail of tears to cascade down her cheeks. "What?" Monica pinched her eyebrows together. "I did it. I got drunk and walked right into my bathroom door, staggered into the hallway, and lost my footing. I took a tumble down 23 stairs. You have no idea how many times I worried about that exact thing happening to my mother." Her chuckle was bitter. Again, she squeezed her eyes shut for a second and turned her head away from Monica. "Jessica Lee, you're lucky to be alive." "Am I? My husband never spends time with me. My father always wanted a boy. Now the only one who paid any attention to me is gone, and I can't even yell at her for making me out to be just like her. I'm a drunk, too," she cried, but quickly choked it back, lifting her chin.
Monica thought for a moment. She had nothing to say to this. She had no experience with alcoholism in her family. It was something she saw in movies and read about in books. She searched for something to say, but nothing seemed right, so she took Jessica Lee's hand instead. It was as if the floodgates opened. Jessica Lee cried. Monica bit her tongue to stay composed. The two of them, practically strangers, crying like babies wasn't what was needed at the moment.
I'll tell the sheriff you didn't do this, I promise, Jessica Lee finally said while wiping her eyes and nose with the back of her hand. I'd really appreciate that, Monica said, giving her hand a soft squeeze before letting go. Oh, I have something for you. You aren't going to believe how I came to have it, but I think this belongs to you. Monica fished around in her purse and found the ruby and diamond ring. She gave it to Jessica Lee along with the story about the prowler and the encounter the night before. This was missing from my mom's hand when I found her in her office. There were only a handful of people there, Jessica Lee said with her bloodshot eyes wide. Was Marianne one of them? Monica asked. Yes, Jessica Lee replied with her nose wrinkled with disgust. I take it you didn't care for her? Monica prodded. She swallowed hard. Part of her wanted to hear the final nail in the coffin of this case that would exonerate her of any wrongdoing, but another part of her wanted it to point in another direction and not at Marianne. The woman had been so nice and helpful to Monica. She paid for her coffee and brought her the books she knew Monica liked to read, not to mention all the inside info she provided when the ECC was getting ready to strike. Why would she do that just to frame her for a murder down the line? That was crazy. That's Marianne. She's got a reputation, but because she works for the local government and has some personal issues, it's like trying to get rid of bedbugs. It's darn near impossible, Jessica Lee said, and explained how Marianne had started to develop some signs of instability. What do you mean? Well, my mother told me she had an outburst at the office when someone had not refilled the copier. There was also a neighbor who had accused her of poisoning their dog because she didn't like how he looked at her. It was an English bulldog. Do you know how docile those creatures are? There have been quite a few weird things like that, just unbelievable coincidences where she always seems to be nearby. I don't know, Jessica Lee said, and gingerly touched her face. And then there was the story about her and my father. Monica didn't say a word. She froze, as if any sudden movement might scare Jessica Lee into not saying anything more. All she could do was shrug and shake her head. Brown's Grounds was just a little business off the main drag. She had no idea what was going on with 99% of the population of Millpond. An affair. Brief. Drunk, I'm sure. Jessica Lee chuckled bitterly. My mother was not one to let gossip and opinions stop her from being seen at the tennis club, the beauty salon, or any of the fundraisers. Staying seen meant she was staying in the loop. Needless to say, whatever my mother wanted, my father gave her. They'd never get divorced. It was a cozy setup, so much so that I married a man just like my father. Tears began to roll down her cheeks, but her body, which had gone rigid as if she'd just realized how much she'd spilled to Monica, a relative stranger, let Monica know she was not looking for a hug, a hand to hold, or sympathy. She was tougher than she looked. That both assured and frightened Monica. They sat there for a second, letting all the information sink in. Of course, she'd have no way of knowing Marianne had mental issues or a fatal attraction. She saw her for a total of 5 minutes a day, at most. She always seemed like a caring, decent person, but there was no denying all these tidbits of information were forming an arrow that pointed in her direction. Finally, she looked at Jessica Lee. The bruises on her face were ugly but would go away. The crack on her head was highlighted by the hair the doctor had to shave in order to put staples in. It looked bad with the dried blood and silver showing, but it would heal too, and she'd be herself in a couple of months. Monica didn't think any common sense suggestions or reassurances were what was needed, though. Look, I'm sorry all this is happening to you. I'll let you get some rest. Monica slid off the bed, then smoothed the blanket with her hand. Miss Brown, I'm sorry I said what I did when you were in my house. My mother's house. She rolled her eyes. I can see why she wanted to give you that honor. I'm not sure why the other ECC members were against it. What honor? She was submitting your business, some coffee house or something, to receive a budding new business award at the gala coming up in a few days. Jessica Lee said, I was supposed to go to that. I don't think I'll make it. She touched her face tenderly.
Monica took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Could that have been why Tawny had Monica's name in a piece of paper in her hand when she died? It was completely possible and made more sense than her scribbling the words Monica Brown down in a last-ditch effort to name her murderer before the Grim Reaper took over. "Thank you, Jessica Lee," Monica said before walking to the door. "Thank you, Miss Brown," Jessica Lee replied, holding up her mother's ring that twinkled and flashed in the light coming through the window. It was a beautiful ring, maybe because it was finally with the person who was entitled to it. Once Monica was out of the hospital and traveling back to her home, calling it quits for the day, she reflected on all that Jessica Lee had said. It was making her head spin. She needed a Coke and maybe a little time in the garden. There was that pesky hole in the fence that was letting unwanted vermin on her property. That needed to be fixed pronto. "Oh, I was so worried about you," Carol said as she hurried across the street, balancing 2 mugs of tea, one in each hand. It wasn't Coke, but it was just as tasty. "What were you doing? Watching the house?"
Yes, between that and the police scanner, I was making sure that if anything happened to you, I'd be there for a possible blood transfusion or jailbreak. What happened today? Carol asked as she took a seat on the front stoop stairs. I don't even know where to start, Monica replied as she took the cup of tea and sat down next to her friend. The mug warmed her hands and smelled of orange spice, kind of like Nate's cologne. That was when the idea hit her. Chapter 16. I don't like this at all, Monica. Nate shifted from one foot to the other in the back of Monica's coffee truck and put his hands on his hips. Nate, it's not like anything can happen to me. I'd be in a busy government building. There are tons of people around. It's just to flush her out, see if all these weird coincidences are really facts that fit together. Monica, I don't know why you think the sheriff of Millpond can't just bring her in for questioning. You do realize that I'm the sheriff, don't you? He looked at her. For a second, she stared into his eyes and felt a connection there, but quickly blinked it away and refocused. Because she'll lie. Do you think I don't have experience with people who lie when being questioned? I'm going to tell you something. What I don't have experience with is a woman so stubborn that she's willing to risk her life just to prove she's right. Nate huffed. And have you forgotten something? What? Monica pinched her eyebrows. Tawny was poisoned. If we tip our hand to Marianne, she's going to have plenty of time to poison you too. I can't just arrest her on coincidences. Did you think of that? That was one loose end Monica couldn't tie off. How could Marianne have gotten my prescription for hydrocodone? Monica stood there for a second, and a wave of déjà vu fell over her. Nate was standing there. Again? No, not Nate. Who came in my truck and stood there and looked at her like he was? That's it! That's how she got my pills! Monica jumped up and down, clapping. I knew it! I knew I'd figure it out. Nate, that's how Marianne took my pills. She was right where you are. Oh my gosh, we did it! We got that final thread tied off in a knot that won't come undone. With his eyes heavy-lidded, Nate just watched her without expression on his face. I have no idea what you're talking about. When I came to work all black and blue, Marianne freaked out and came up the back of the truck to see my face closer. I was filling orders. My purse and prescription were right there. She pointed to her purse that was in the place she always set it. That's when she lifted the pills. If I was filling orders, she had at least a good 3 or 4 minutes to see them and take them. When did this happen? Monica. The same day Tawny died. Monica continued to bounce on her heels, a smile on her face. You standing there snapped that memory back. No one ever comes in the truck, unless they're special. Well, Marianne isn't special, but she thinks she is, and she came in out of concern. I do believe that. But then she saw an opportunity and took it. Monica walked up and gave Nate a blow-by-blow description of how she believed Marianne took her pills while she was busy working. Then she stood in front of him, a little out of breath, and waited.
Nate took her by the shoulders, looked down at her, and without warning, kissed her. In that moment, Monica forgot all about Marianne, the pills, Tawny's death, and even her beloved coffee business. In that moment, there was nothing but her and Nate, and she kissed him back. When he finally let go of her shoulders and slowly pulled back, Monica remained with her eyes closed for a second. When they fluttered open, Nate was looking at her as if waiting for a slap to come his way. "Why did you do that?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "I've been wanting to do that since I first saw you," he whispered back. Monica swallowed hard. "Really?" He nodded. "Is that bad?" Monica shook her head and smiled. "I was hoping you would." "Really?" Nate looked at her and tilted his head to the right. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" "What would I say, Nate? Hey, how about giving me a kiss that will make my knees buckle and I'll forget where I'm at? Let's just try it on for size." Monica rolled her eyes as her cheeks flashed red. But this time she didn't try to hide it. In fact, she giggled at herself. "I wish you would have. It would have saved me a lot of time trying to figure you out." He smirked, a few strands of his hair falling over his forehead. "Now, what was I saying before you ambushed me?" Monica squinted up at him. "Ambush? You had some harebrained idea of coaxing a confession out of a dangerous and unstable woman. But you'd be there. Call me crazy, but I think if Marianne decided to try something, I do believe you could take her. It might be close, but I'll bet you could take her," Monica replied with a smirk of her own. "Monica, I think we ought to go to the police station. I'll call Marianne from there and have her come in under the guise of giving me some additional information. When she arrives and sees you there, we'll see what she does." "Okay, how about I go to City Hall and just try to rattle her cage? Then you come to my house and hide and wait to see if she shows up again to cause trouble." Monica bounced on her heels. "You sure do like poking the bear." Just then, there was a call on Nate's cell phone. It was the dispatcher for the police department. There had been an accident at the edge of town. A semi-truck had jackknifed. A couple of cars were involved. "I have to go," he said, and slipped his arm around Monica's waist to pull her to him tightly. "Don't do anything until I get back." She looked up at him and felt herself melt a little. With a huge smile on her face, she lifted her chin up a little. "No promises." He smirked and kissed her on the forehead. "How did I know you were going to say that?" Turning her loose, he turned and headed toward the exit at the back of the truck. "Be careful," she said. "I will. Hey, you know what else I learned today?" "What's that?" Monica asked, smiling and giddy. "I learned one way to get you to stop talking." Nate winked as Monica's mouth fell open and she shook her head. Before she could come up with anything smart to say, he was gone. What the heck had just happened? Had her whole life just gone topsy-turvy during a murder investigation while she was one of the main suspects? Yes, that was exactly what happened. Monica didn't know what to do first, whether she should go to City Hall and confront Marianne, or if she should call Carol and tell her about Nate. This was a dilemma she hadn't counted on. Nate had thrown the most welcome wrench into her plans, and she couldn't be happier.
After a few minutes, Monica decided to do both. On her way to City Hall, she called Carol. Her voicemail picked up. All Monica could think was that Carol was busy with the kids, so she left her a message saying she was going to City Hall to handle some business and that she had kissed Nate. Goodbye. "That will get her to call back," Monica chuckled. What a day. And she had no idea how quickly her bliss was going to disappear with one single question.
Chapter 17. City Hall was never all that busy. A couple of Millpond residents milled around, getting driver's licenses renewed or paying their water bills. Most of the employees were at their desks in their respective offices. No one paid any particular attention to who was coming and going. Monica walked in and at first thought to stop at the information desk to inquire where Marianne worked. For the life of her, she wasn't sure of her last name. It would look suspicious, she was sure, to say the name Marianne and then give a description of her. They might think she was a stalker. With a death having occurred on the premises just a few days ago, Monica was not willing to take the chance they'd call the police. So she decided to roam the halls until she found her. In a small town like Millpond, everyone knew everyone. Monica was sure anyone who recognized her would just think she was there to address something that had to do with her business. No red flags would go up in anyone's mind. So, with her shoulders back and her head high, Monica walked to the stairs and headed up to the second floor. No one stopped her. No heavy, thick hand of a security guard clamped down on her shoulder. Up she went, and once on the second floor, she regretted her decision. It's just such a shame, but the law ought to handle it soon, Richard Smith was saying to another man. Monica recognized his outfit. And if that wasn't enough, Tanya was standing right there next to him, nodding her head. I just wish they'd take the police tape off her office. It's so morbid. Don't they know how this is affecting the staff here? Tanya chirped. The comment left a sour taste in Monica's mouth. Neither of the Smiths seemed too concerned with how this was affecting Jessica Lee. It took a special kind of jerk to make a mysterious death all about themselves and not the victim or their family. Monica looked down the hallway past the small group of gossipers and didn't see any yellow police tape. Perhaps it was on the top floor. Monica didn't know why, but the urge to go take a peek was overwhelming. She had to do it. Taking another deep breath, she walked quietly and quickly across the hallway to the next flight of stairs. Once out of view, she held her breath and listened. No one said, "Hey, there goes the guilty person now," or "Quick, get her." Monica imagined it was what the witches of Salem must have felt like trying to gather sticks for a fire or apples from a tree, while all the nearby neighbors kept an eye out. Shaking off any nervousness and releasing her breath, Monica climbed the stairs. It was as if the entire third floor had been double insulated and soundproofed. An eerie sensation settled over Monica. There was something so wrong about all of it. Even before she saw the yellow police tape, she could feel that something bad had happened here. Most of the offices had their doors closed. The Parks and Recreation office had people inside, but its door was shut. The Public Safety office's door was also shut, probably to keep out the noise if the police or detectives had to come back and examine the room Tawny was using as her temporary office. Monica walked up to the door and peeked inside. There was no name on the glass window. The placard next to the door jamb just read "Office." The blinds covering the glass were slitted. Inside, Monica saw a thick wooden desk with a tall leather-backed chair behind it. There were 2 chairs in front of it. It looked like anyone's office, except for the stain of coffee on the carpet and a knocked-over picture frame. That was when Monica noticed another door behind the desk. Like in the movies, politicians had offices with other doors where they could sneak out while an angry constituent waited to speak to them. It appeared that Tanya Clifford had that luxury too. Or she had a really nice closet right there. It couldn't be hard to figure out where that door led. After looking over her shoulder to make sure no one was sneaking up on her, Monica took a deep breath, let it out, and walked confidently past the Parks and Recreation Department door, hoping no one was bought her. An unmarked door that could be a utility closet was just past Tawny's office. If she wasn't looking for it, she could have easily walked right past it, thinking it held nothing more than mops, cleansers, a bucket, and a yellow caution wet surface sandwich board. It's probably locked, Monica thought. But as she took hold of the doorknob and gave it a turn, her heart jumped as it clicked, clacked, and opened. When she opened the door and peeked in, it was a tiny vestibule that led right to the door to Tawny's office. Slipping inside, Monica closed the door behind her and fumbled in the darkness for the knob to the adjoining door. When she found it, she gave it a slow turn, half expecting it to be locked. There was no way her luck could be this good, but it opened just as easily as the other had. Monica took a deep breath and stepped inside. The room smelled funny from being completely closed up. Stuffy, dry, lifeless. Monica stepped all the way in and partially closed the door behind her. There were still documents on Tawny's desk. Not many, just a few folders of things that only pertained to the Edgewater Community Council. Why did they give her an office all to herself just so she could shuffle around 10, maybe 12 files at most? All Monica could think was that she gave that much money to special interest parties that they allowed this. Small-town politics weren't that much different from big-town politics. Kneeling down, she got behind the desk and pulled open the bottom drawer. There were 6 hanging files with nothing important in any of them. The second drawer had a pad of paper and some rubber bands. The top drawer had pens, a phone book, and a box of staples. What the heck? This is what she was killed for? She wasn't doing anything, just sort of playing big shot, Monica whispered as she sat cross-legged out of view. And who uses a phone book anymore? Monica moved the bulky yellow pages and felt something strange.
She grabbed the book and pulled it out of the drawer. It was light. Too light for a phone book. When she flipped it open, she found out why. The pages had been cut out. Inside were 3 sealed envelopes. Before she could study the contents that had been missed by the police, there was movement at the door.
Quickly, Monica tucked the book under her arm and slunk back into the vestibule where she'd entered the room, closing the door as far as she could without making a sound. She expected to see the police there, the last of the evidence collectors, maybe even a cleanup crew. She didn't know, but she didn't dare move until she knew what they were doing. To her shock, it wasn't the police or a cleaning crew at all, but her injured frenemy, Marianne. Marianne quickly slid inside the room, closing the door behind her, and began to look around. She pulled the photo on the desk apart, then put it back together. She rifled through the desk files that Monica had just flipped through, finding nothing of interest. Unless Marianne wanted the financial reports and volunteer applications to the Edgewater Community Council, there was absolutely nothing of interest in any of those files. Monica realized the unmarked white envelopes she held were probably what Marianne was looking for. The thought made her hold them tighter. Marianne, who was obviously still in some kind of pain from her tumble off Monica's back porch, grunted and limped around, getting more and more frustrated by the minute. Her breathing became raspier, and she was mumbling to herself things Monica couldn't make out. The way she was lumbering around reminded Monica of Igor from the old Frankenstein movies. She was hunched to her left, her hand holding her knee as she paced back and forth, finally stopping with both hands on the desk. She hadn't found what she was looking for. Her face contorted into a grimace. Pushing herself up with another grunt, she turned around and went to the door. Carefully, she peeked out the blinds. A sound, in a matter of seconds, determined Monica's fate. She wouldn't be leaving that room without Marianne seeing her. It was her cell phone. Why hadn't she thought to turn off the sound or shut the thing off altogether? How many people lost their lives because an untimely return call from a friend wanting to gossip gave away their hiding place? Suddenly, it appeared that Marianne's knee or ankle was no longer hurting her. She whipped her head around and glared in the direction of the closet. Monica froze for a second, holding her breath as she peeked out through the crack in the closet door. She was sure Marianne could see her. All the more reason to turn and bolt out the way she'd come. Monica whirled around and dashed to the door, flinging it open only to run right into Richard and Tanya. Smith. "What are you doing?" Tanya shouted. "You shouldn't be in there. What were you doing?" Marianne," Monica pointed. Just then, Marianne appeared and pointed back at Monica. "I can't believe you'd do something like this, Monica," Marianne said, her eyes wide and her forehead covered with sweat. She limped out again, holding her knee, this time more for effect than because she was in any real pain. "Marianne, are you all right?" Tanya asked, paying no attention to Monica's condition. It was obvious that the employees of Millpond City Hall were going to stick together. Monica knew she was on her own, and that if she was going to prove herself innocent of everything, she needed Nate. "She stole that," Marianne nodded, toward Monica and the phone book in her arms. "I'll take that," Richard said, and tried to take the book, but Monica clenched her teeth and hugged it tightly to her. "Over my dead body. I want the sheriff here," Monica insisted. "Look, you are obviously very embarrassed and upset. You want to make a bigger deal out of this than necessary. Just hand over the book and we can pretend this whole thing never happened." Marianne also reached for the phone book. "Oh, no, this is just too much. She's not going to hand anything over, Marianne. She's going to answer to the police." "Yes, good idea. Get the cops here," Monica smiled. "I don't think this is any laughing matter," Richard chimed in, but Monica looked at him and shook her head. "You're right, it's not funny at all. Get the cops here quickly, before I get the urge to run." Monica looked at Marianne, arched her eyebrow and smirked. "Marianne, you wouldn't want that, right? So you'll stay here too. It's not like you have any work to do you?" Marianne bit her bottom lip. The look in her eyes shifted from arrogance to, "Uh-oh, I didn't think this through."
"Marianne, you go on back to work," Tanya said. "What?" Monica barked. "Richard, call the police," Tanya ordered. He already had his phone out of his pocket and nodded his head dutifully. "Are you kidding? You aren't even going to ask her what she was doing in Tawny's office? I'll tell you why I was in there. I'm being accused of having something to do with her death. I went snooping to see what I could find that would prove I didn't. All I ever did was serve Tawny coffee. I'm trying to save my business and my skin. Why were you in there, Marianne? Did you loan her some romance books you wanted back? Or was it something to do with a real-life romance?" Monica blurted out. Remembering Jessica Lee mentioning the rumors of an affair between Marianne and Tawny's husband, the words formed and tumbled out of her mouth before she even understood them. But Marianne understood them completely as the color ran out of her cheeks. "That's preposterous," Tanya snapped again, rolling her eyes. Insisting Marianne go back to work, she extended her arm toward the open hallway. Marianne limped pitifully away, while Richard spoke to the cops, and Tanya stood there gloating. "You're not going to have that look on your face once you realize you let a murderer go," Monica huffed, holding the phone book close. She certainly hoped something inside would clear her name, but for now, she had to wait until the police arrived to find out.
"Didn't I tell you to wait until I got back?" Nate whispered after he arrived at City Hall to find Monica sitting in one of the conference rooms, with Richard Smith standing over her like she was Dillinger, and Tanya waiting by the door as if to block any attempt at escape. "Would you tell these two to relax? It's not like I've hidden a shank somewhere on my person," Monica retorted, pointing at Richard and Tanya. "I'll take it from here. Thank you. Would you mind going to get Marianne for me? I believe she has something to do with all this," Nate asked, looking at the Smiths. "That's just great. Everyone knows those two are secretly dating," Tanya said loudly to her husband, who quickly pushed her out the door as if to erase what she'd just said. "Does everyone think we're dating?" Monica huffed, still clutching the book. "I don't know, Monica. I don't have time for town gossip." "Well, if they do, they'll think you're part of some conspiracy to keep me out of trouble. That's not a good look for a small-town sheriff." "Well, I've never been concerned about how I look to everyone else," Nate said, focusing on the phone book he gently took from Monica. She told him where she'd found it and that she was just curious to see what Tawny's office might offer as evidence. "I didn't expect to find anything like this. For all I know, there are coupons for $1 off Smirnoff vodka inside those envelopes," she swallowed. Nate looked at her and arched his eyebrows. "Okay, that was tacky. Sorry." "It's okay." He tore open the first envelope and pulled out a photo. The second also held a photo. The third, however, was a letter written by Marianne. He flipped one of the photos over to show Monica. "Oh dear," she gasped. "This is what Marianne was looking for. I think we have a clear motive for Tawny's death, and it has nothing to do with you. These look like they were taken by a private detective," Nate said as he studied the picture of Marianne and Mr. Clifford. However, they were not in some racy embrace or even a quick peck on the cheek. It looked like they were arguing, more like Marianne was arguing. The letter was a threat to Mr. Clifford that Marianne was ready and willing to do anything necessary to prove her feelings for the man. "The Smiths told her to go back to work. If she knew this stuff was here and that we have it, I doubt she's at her desk doing work." Just then, like the punchline to a bad joke, Richard and Tanya Smith came into the conference room. Marianne left the building," he said as his wife ducked behind him, looking out the door and anywhere but at Monica and Nate. "See? I told you so." Monica shrugged and shook her head as she glared at the Smiths. "We'll get her," Nate said. He made a quick call to dispatch. An APB was put out for Marianne, and a unit was sent to her house. "You all were so sure it was me, and don't think I don't know what this was really about. It's about that Miriam and Roland Leach monument. You just can't let that go," Monica scolded. The fact that Tanya barely peeked up at Monica from behind her husband made her blood boil. "It was an honest mistake," Richard said, putting his hands up. Monica stood and looked at Nate. "Am I free to go?" "Yes," he said.
I'll come by later." Before Monica left, she looked down at Nate, who was still sitting and studying the evidence that had been hidden in the hollowed-out phone book. When he looked up at her, she grinned. Then, without warning or discretion, she leaned forward, took his face tenderly in her hands, and gave him a soft kiss. "No, Tanya, it's no secret. We are dating," Monica huffed and stomped past the couple, who scurried to the side out of her way, as if she might start throwing punches. "You'd have every right to," Carol said as she sat on Monica's porch with her, each of them holding a glass of wine. "The nerve. I mean, after all this, they are still trying to get my truck to move. I can never move ever now, even if a prime spot opened next to Fleckenstein's bakery, because you know they don't sell coffee there, just pastries." "I know," Carol concurred. "Even if that spot opened, I'd never be able to take it, because I'd see it as losing the war." How crazy is that? That's crazy. I don't know what's worse, that someone I considered a friend tried to frame me for murder, or that there was a group of mean girls hoping I'd get blamed for murder. Monica winced, like the words stung coming out of her mouth. Hey, it's over and done with. They know who the guilty party is, and she's in a holding cell by now, probably waiting for her lawyer and not saying a peep about anything, Carol said. Just then, Nate's pickup truck rolled up. He got out, smiling at Monica as he cut the engine and climbed out. "Mrs. Hamilton, always nice to see you," he said to Carol. "Hey, Sheriff, I was just leaving. Mon, call me tomorrow." She raised her glass before turning and heading home across the street. "Did she confess?" Monica asked. "We ran into a little problem." "What kind of problem?" Immediately, Monica thought she was back in the hot seat. "We've ran into a little problem," Nate replied. "What kind of problem?" Immediately, Monica thought she was back in the hot seat. "Mary Ann has disappeared. It looks like she just skipped town. There's a ton of evidence at her house, including a diary outlining that she did exactly what you said. She stole your meds and gave them to Tawny. She hadn't expected to kill her, but didn't seem too upset that she had. You were going to take the blame." "Do you have any idea where she went?" "We've got some leads. It won't be long before we catch up to her. We put a freeze on her bank account. If she uses her cell phone, we'll track her. It's just a matter of time." Monica took a deep breath as Nate took a seat on the front porch next to her. "At least I still have my truck and my business." "Yeah, and nomination for the Best New Business Award at the fundraiser Friday night. That's exciting." "What are you talking about? You didn't hear about that?" "Oh yeah, someone wanted to honor Tawny's last wish, and that was to nominate you for Millpond's Best New Business," Nate said before taking Monica's hand in his. All the stresses of the day seemed to shrink. They didn't disappear completely, but they were significantly reduced by the touch of his warm hand enveloping hers.
"I wasn't even invited to that thing. I'm not going." Monica shook her head and squeezed Nate's hand. "You can't make me go by myself. I've already arranged for 2 seats at the streets and sanitation table. You can't make me face those guys alone after I told them I would have the most beautiful date in the place." Nate pulled her hand to his lips and kissed it quickly. "I don't even have anything to wear," she fussed. "I'll bet you can find something." Of course she could. Of course she could find something lovely to wear on her first official date with Nate. But did she want to? Did she want to get all dolled up for a fundraiser that she wasn't part of, and where she knew she wasn't going to win Best New Business if the ECC ladies had any say in it? Still, when she looked at Nate, his smirk pulling a smile out of her as well, and a rosy tint to her cheeks, she decided she couldn't say no. She didn't want to. Chapter 19. "Are you having a good time?" Nate asked. He was in his dressy police uniform. Monica thought he was handsome in his jeans and badge, but in those fancy duds, he looked like he'd stepped out of a Hollywood movie. They danced and chatted with everyone at their table. The fellas from streets and sanitation were not only funny bunch, but half of them were regular customers at Brown's Grounds. I hate to say it, but I am, considering the Edgewater Community Council has been staring daggers at me most of the night. That's because of how you look. Did I tell you how amazing you look tonight? About 4 times. Monica blushed. Look, you look amazing in jeans and your Browns Grounds t-shirt, but this, he stepped back and looked her up and down, letting out a whistle. Stop, she whispered. I won't stop. I've got the most beautiful woman on my arm, and I don't plan on letting anyone think for a second that we aren't together. I think you've had too much to drink, Monica chuckled. I haven't had a drop. I just know how I felt about you since the first day you argued with me, the first day I saw that attitude, Nate said, softly pushing a couple of strands of hair from her face. He looked down at her and she looked up at him. I wouldn't have had attitude if you started it, Monica replied. She was about to argue further when Nate leaned down and kissed her. She vaguely heard the MC of the event say they had the award for the best new business in Millpond to be announced. Monica didn't care. Instead, she slipped her arm around Nate and kissed him back. Brown's Grounds was not the winner. A new hardware store took the prize. That isn't really right, Nate whispered as he pulled back from their kiss. Monica smiled wide. It doesn't matter. What I've got right here, right now, beats any wooden placard. Where would I hang it? You, I can parade around all I want. Are you saying I'm like a trophy boyfriend? First place, Monica joked before kissing Nate again.
You have been listening to Decaf Deceit, a Brown's Ground Mystery, Book 6, by Wendy Meadows. Thank you for listening. For more cozy mysteries and heartwarming clean romance, visit wendymeadows.com.